What's good? That was quick. Welcome back, friends. We're here at SWC. I'm right in the middle of it, and I'm chilling with my man, Wraithen, actually. I want to talk about two people that's been away for a minute. Welcome back, brother.
Thanks, man. Good.
How you been?
I'm good. Life is good.
What you been up to since, since we've seen you?
Actually, since last year at Worlds when I got stomped by Leon on stage, I've just been working. That's it.
I mean, that would make me kind of leave as well, Leon. I think this is the third time I've roasted him on camera today, so like maybe I'll pump the brakes on that. But real talk, good to see you. I've talked a lot about what it's like kind of returning here and seeing the SMITE family, pretty much. Give me your feels and your thoughts on what it's like coming back and just. I mean, I've seen you get mobbed by people out here.
Yeah, I know, it's great. I mean, this is like one of my favorite events of the year. It's digitally, especially this last year, kind of being at a distance because of work and everything, and like you see everybody all over Twitter and Twitch, and then just getting out and being able to say hi and get flagged down by people and hear all the stories and good stuff. It's good.
I mean, for me, it's a lot like everybody has that one friend that you could like chat to, and then y'all get busy, and then 3 years later you pick up like nothing happened. That's the entirety of this audience for me, to be honest with you. Like, that's kind of how I've been feeling.
Yeah, no, same with me. It's kind of funny, like, hear, like, stories or, like, moments on stream or at past SWCs. You're like, oh, my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did do that. Oh, shit. Right?
I know that part.
I was trying to actually repress that and not think about it. But thanks. But, no, it's been great. It's been awesome.
It's definitely been a lot of fun. And you know what my favorite thing is that I never get tired of is somebody comes up and they're like, hey, man, cool. And you're like, nice to meet you. And they're like, yeah, my name's Josh. I go by, but this happened before with my buddy Cactus Chime. And I'm like, oh, you're in my chat every day. You're hanging out. Oh, cool. We already know each other. Yeah. And I think that's like 75% of all of these interactions.
Yeah, 100%. I remember last year I had somebody come up and they were like, "Hey, can I just get a picture with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." What's your Twitch name? And it was somebody who'd watched me for like 5 years. I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're family. Like, get over here." Like, but yeah, no, it's great. I love all of it. Come say hi if you see me. I'll be here all weekend.
So you have been one of the bigger supporters of a lot of the players, especially living down here in Atlanta. You've definitely lent your house and your home and your kitchen to a lot of the guys. Are you rooting for anybody in specific?
I want to see my boy LASBRA play super well. He lived in my house when he was playing Raijin mid and nobody wanted him on their team. So it's good to see him shining in the jungle and kicking some butt. So hopefully I see him today too. So.
It's been a lot of fun taking a look at what he's been able to do, and hopefully they'll be able to kind of stand up and do their thing. So what do you have, any words of wisdom from Coach Wraithen?
Coach Wraithen? You want to kill the enemy Titan before they kill yours. That's the big one. I thought a lot about it, and that's really the key.
I hate this guy.
I'm not good at this game. I'm bad.
I feel you. Gold for life, baby. Wraithen, so much fun. Thank you. We got everybody kind of. You want to give a shout out?
Yeah, shout out Odin, Dalton, my boys. We play all the time. Let's get it. Odin, Dalton. Hope you're watching, boys. Let's get it.
Hell yeah, it's a lot of fun here at SWC. I'm gonna bounce around. Time for game one.
Gods and goddesses, welcome to the stage, the Highland Ravens. And make some noise for their opponents, the Jade Dragons.
Finally, a moment for our painted up Jade Dragons fans out in the crowd. They've been hanging out, getting rowdy all day, and now their team takes the stage. Welcome back to the analyst for our second quarterfinal of the day. Still Dolson. Frog joins me now. Inbound and Hazer still here with me. You guys will be with me for a little while. Hazer, you and I are going to be on opposite sides of this desk all weekend long. Now we start to get into the SPL versus SPL matchups. We'll bounce back and forth a little bit throughout the rest of this weekend. The one quarterfinal already in the books here, team. It's a 2-0 for the Styx Ferryman. Frog, I'm going to jump right to you. Our next matchup, Jade Dragons, prior to Leviathan's Mambo, prior to Oni Warriors, Camelot Kings. Jade Dragons, Ravens. Does this one have the potential to go 3?
Oh, absolutely. I think this might be the most anticipated matchup for the entirety of the day. The one most likely to go 3. Of course, 2 SPL versus SPL teams, and one might consider the 4th seed Jade Dragons versus the 5th seed Highland Ravens, right? So these teams are extremely close together to the point that a lot of people expected the Ravens to qualify through in the initial qualifying phase, and so they had to go through that secondary tournament. But I think this could be a pretty close one.
I think it could be. I hope it is. We had all 2-0s last year, hoping for some 3-gamers today on quarterfinal Friday. Remember, the winner of this one moves on to face the Styx Ferryman in the semifinals, the number 1 seed that's looking great after their set earlier on today. I think there's a lot to break down here, Hazer, between the Ravens and the Jade Dragons. I'm starting with the Dragons. I'm looking at Mike because one thing that really comes to mind, remember the heartbreaking semifinal loss last year for the Dragons and Mike. After that game, the camera cuts to him. He's doing a lot of, it was on me, guys, I'm sorry. He's a competitor through and through, and Hazer, I imagine that moment is adding some fuel to Mike. Clearly it did, to come out hot here this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like that moment might have even fueled the roster change this team decided to make. They saw that things weren't going their way and they decided to make a switch. PBM, a player who cares immensely about this game. He's been competing for a long time and he is, I don't know, one of the most passionate players I've ever met in the scene. He clearly cares so much about winning and about coming out here, and he will do whatever it takes to win. This year it happened to be a roster change they decided to make. They brought in Coast for vote, and I think that's been paying off for them. They've finally kind of found their way as a team and gone up to the 4th seed.
On the flip side, though, we'll get to the Ravens a little bit as well. Team that got selected, or I guess given to the Jade Dragons by the end of the selection show. Zapman, Hurriwind, Ven, Scream, Haddix. This is no pushover roster inbound. What do the Ravens have that they're bringing to the table against the Dragons?
I mean, I think the biggest problem with this team is their consistency. I think they've shown supreme highs. They were dominating in phase 1. This phase 2 hasn't gone as well for them, but they have that sky-high potential where that is going to make this such a competitive game. They have these world champions that have competed at the highest stage. They've won it all, and I think that's going to play a little bit into this. A little bit of their problem, I think, is will they be able to match that Jade Dragons early game? If they're able to do that, going to the late game, I have all the faith in the world in this Ravens comp.
So Frog, I think some of that then brings up Scream, the jungler for the Highland Ravens, matching the pace of what LASBRA does on the other side. What are your expectations for the Highland Ravens jungler here in our set?
I think Scream in particular, one of those players in the league that has almost like a not necessarily meta influence God Pool. He will really bring out anything that we expected, that we never expect him to bring out. We've seen him on the Surtr, on the Gilgamesh, right? In the past lives, he's played anything under the sun. And so I think especially against LASBRA, who is maybe more of a traditional jungler, we find him more likely to see him on those assassins. That being said, Sino falls into that category. We just saw him on Thor and on Maman, the 2 top, we saw those a lot recently. Yep. So it could be that they've tried to corral Scream a little bit. They give him a, here's the gods you can pick, bring us to the meta, or if they let Scream play his game, I think that the Jade Dragons might be caught off guard.
And there are a lot of conversations on the duo side of the map for the Highland Ravens. The Zapman passive, it tends to kick in right around now during the year, during the SMITE competitive year. Worlds has arrived, and so has Zapman, alongside Hurriwind over in the duo lane. Highland Ravens bringing a lot that the Jade Dragons are going to have to watch out for in our second quarterfinal. Inbound, but the Jade Dragons are bringing a lot here themselves as well. It's not the same Jade Dragons that we saw on this very same stage last year, but it's a team that, after an ADC change, has sort of started to find that identity and really thinks that they can make a run at things here this weekend.
Yeah, and I think the ADC change is the place that I would start looking at. That is the the driving force, I think, to a lot of these Jade Dragons comps. They want to play through duo. They want to get a lead through coast. They want to have Mike ahead. And that leads them to playing gods like Aphro, gods that dominate this duo lane. On her in duo, another god. And it'll be, on the opposite side, Zapman's not doing that. Zapman's playing to just kind of live the early game. He'll die as many times as he needs to if he means he's going 30, 35 minutes. And it'll be interesting, the playoff of how much will they play to mitigate that duo lane of the Dragons? How much will the Zapman, Hurriwind duo really try to just live to that late game, and are they going to be able to live for it?
Lots of storylines at play here in our second quarterfinal of the day. Let's hear from the ADCs themselves. It's Kelly standing by with Zapman and Coast.
Thank you so much, Dolson. Everyone, please get some noise for Zapman and VaporishCoast here. Now, Zapman, you are a 3-time champ. This is your 7th time at the World Championships. What is it about you that makes it so we keep seeing you back here time and time again?
I think it's just the feeding that I do. No one really feeds like I do. So I made a career out of it, and I don't know, I'm just blessed with great teammates, and I've been playing for 11 years, so I know how to win SMITE games, and it's just luck as well.
Well, that leads me to my next question then, because while I was watching the group stages, I kept hearing something about a Zap passive. What exactly is the Zap passive?
Very rarely do I go like 0-10 in games and things like that, and I end up winning. So I started a meme out of it, just saying like, make an excuse for myself, you know, like it's a Zap passive. I really just fed.
Well, we'll see if you're going to feed again today. Coast, you are the newest member to the Jade Dragons, and arguably the reason that we are seeing them here today on stage. What is it that you provided for the team?
I'm just always looking to run it down. I think Dragons, like, the role was a really passive player, and I'm always looking to get in there. So I think now we always constantly have a lane to play through. So yeah, I think I've just helped out early game, and I think I'm a really good caller late game. Going to get everyone on the same page, get everyone hyped. So looking forward to it.
Well, what you do for the early game, Zap, we've seen the early game not necessarily be the Highland Ravens bonus, but every single time you guys are still able to stay strong and come back. What is the main factor to that success from coming from behind?
There's just not to panic. You know, deaths happen, but as long as you stay the course, do your buffs, farm, you don't fall too behind, and you can still win in the late game team fights. So I would say just being level-headed.
And obviously, mentals are such an important part of the game. Now, gentlemen, there's 2 great teams here, but only one of you can make it to the semifinals tomorrow. Coast, is there anything you'd like to say to Zapman before we get into game 1?
Obviously, good luck, Steve. I have a lot of respect for you, but I hope you get real comfy in that tower, because I'm going to be pushing you in there all the time. So get comfy, man. Get comfy.
Zapman, anything to say in return?
I would say he reminds me a lot of myself when I was younger, you know, so I wish him the best of luck, and we'll see what happens.
All right, guys, go to your seats, and let's head back to the desk.
Those are some big words from Coast, because the 3 lightning bolts on Zap's collar glisten a little bit different on the world stage, and to look at those and still have that confidence, Hazer is maybe exactly what Coast is talking about with his aggressive play style.
Yeah, I've actually heard from the Dragons that him in comms, he's so positive, he's so aggressive, and he wants to play and he wants to own, and he thinks he's better than people, and he'll say it. And that's like a bit of bravado that I feel like you need in competitive. It really helps you to play your game, to play aggressive, not to you know, fall into timidness on the world stage. I don't think there's any danger of that with Coast.
A lot of world champions on the stage in this matchup, a handful of them on the Highland Ravens. All right, these 2 are conflicted. I met them earlier on today, actually, and they were really looking forward to this matchup. Unfortunately, the way the quarterfinals fell, opposite teams. So much conversation around the duo lane, as it should be. Mid lane as well, especially as we start to set the stage for meta and picks and bans. Frog, when you look at Dardez, when you look at Ven, is there crossover? Is there carryover? Do you imagine a mid lane dynamic starting to form between these 2 teams in picks and bans?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mid lane's been an interesting one recently. You have these more aggressive picks come through. We just saw Paul play a couple of them, the Vulcan, the set, of course.
Yep.
I am not anticipating either of that from these mid laners.
Sure.
I think more meta-focused and more prone to play around those side lanes. You just heard it from Coast, right? Yep. They want to push down that dual lane. That being said, you get a lot of strong mid laners there. You get your Babas, you get your Thos, you get some of those slower mid laners that are ready to farm up. You get the Hera from Dardez playing his own meta a little bit. So there's a lot to look forward to. I think if you are going to see those mages focus and picks and bans, probably more likely to be on the side of Venenu. They definitely like to play through him as they get towards that mid 3v3.
Inbound, a matchup that we've seen plenty throughout this year and in the history of competitive Smite. Nika versus Haddix over in solo. What does that dynamic look like in your mind?
I mean, this is just two really strong solo laners. They play through whatever their team needs them to play, whether they need them to play those warriors, those guardians, and I expect pretty much the same as last game, or last set. I expect Osiris's, I expect Bellonas, Sun Wukongs, maybe an Achilles here or there, Kukulkan, really basic warriors, because that just kind of seems what the meta has devolved into. But they both play them to the top of their game. They're both very strong. I would say Haddix maybe lanes slightly stronger, but I think Nika's slightly better in the late game. But they're both just very close to each other in terms of skill.
You feeling the same, Hazer? Any additional thoughts on Nika v Haddix in solo?
Yeah, I think we saw Haddix absolutely dominate the tournament coming into this one, right? He was by far the best solo laner, maybe Deathwalker up there with him, but Haddix was just able to run games on his own for this team, and I'm not sure that he'll be able to do it against Nika. Nika, I think, a step above a lot of the guys who he's crushed. I'm kind of expecting these two to cancel each other out across the set. Both play really well, really solid, but neither able to gain a real upper hand over the other.
Well, fellas, let's get into it. Picks and bans for game one between the Jade Dragons and the Highland Raven. Kicking off right now. And a lot of priority we've seen towards early jungle bans. Granted, we're only one quarterfinal into today, and that may change. Frog, what are you looking for here in the first 6 bans? Standard run-of-the-mill meta-type bans, or any particular players getting singled out?
I think there will probably be a little bit of focus. Inbound already mentioned the Aphrodite potential from the Jade Dragons. That's a pick they like to go back to. Of course, the On Her. Granted, we saw a little bit less focus on that On Her towards the last qualifying tournament, but given that it's something Coast likes to go back to so consistently, no surprise to see it banned out there. I think from the Dragons, though, you're focusing out Scream is absolutely the right player to target. That Thor taken off the board, perhaps the Maman Brigitte as well, potential ban. Other than that, though, there's some small targets. I do expect it to be pretty standard from these teams.
I want to touch on this On Her again quick, because this is the god that Coast kind of made his name on, and they banned it away first. So that means they're trying to set the dual lane stage a little bit. Is Coast going to be able to dominate dual lane without that On Her? Will he go for that Hachi and just look to play more aggressive? I'm curious to see what his next god is.
Yeah, an interesting one there as well. We've seen a first pick side ban Athena here. Did the Ravens not want it? Were they not interested in a trade? They get the Baba Yaga, so a few mages denied in this one. Over to Dardez to see what he can get, but Baba Yaga for Ven, certainly a really, really powerful pick.
Baba Yaga opens up now new opportunities for the Jade Dragons. Osiris, Hachiman, you're getting the idea, Frog, that these are going to be a couple mainstay picks this weekend.
That's an exciting top 2 for me for the Dragons. I think Hachi getting up top early, making sure that Coast, despite getting banned out early, does take the Hachiman, make sure that you're comfortable over there in the dual lane, and then Nika, I mean, this Dragons team, we have not gotten to see them since this meta change, since mages left the solo lane. And Nika, of course, one of the star warrior players that we've seen over the last couple of years. So getting a top pick for him, something he can be aggressive on over in the solo lane, really speaks to the Dragons what they're looking to do.
And in this next spot with the Ravens, we have that Athena banned out. Hazer mentioned that's a first side ban, which is really interesting. This leaves open both the Ganesh, the Sobek. We've not really seen Mike go towards this Ganesh very often, so maybe this is a situation that the Ravens can just lock in this Sobek and not have to worry about that Ganesh counterpick. Awilix is another very valuable god available. Scream is a player that's made his name kind of on this Awilix recently, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I think that does point towards the Sobek, as you said. I wouldn't be surprised to see that locked in there. As we see the hover, Bobby, you're on point here. Sobek, Awilix come through, a classic combo pluck into that gravity surge from Awilix, the knock-up from the 2 as well, going to be capable of putting them in there, and the Awilix can bring them into the danger zone. And Dardez, signature Morrigan pick, not locked in.
I mean, if you like something the other team's got, well, you can get it yourself, I suppose, if you pick up the Morrigan. Inbound, what stands out?
I'm a little curious about this Morrigan pick, because so far, nothing sticks out to me as like, this is a god I want to transform into. There's no Wukong for survivability. There's no big assassin ultimate available for him to want to use. That kind of shows me that the Dragons are going to look for maybe like a Hunbots in this next bottom 2 picks, something that he can actually use to transform into, because so far, nothing sticks out as a good Morrigan transform.
Frog, in your mind, though, it has the Awilix and now the Morrigan. Does that start to play into the mind of the Ravens and the Dragons here moving into the second wave of bans? You got to be careful of what you pick. You don't want the Morrigan changing into it. On the flip side, you got someone with a lot of knockups, and you're maybe trying to avoid more facilitation of that character.
Absolutely. You're looking to influence that second half of picks and bans around these picks. I think the Dragons, they've got those bottom 2 picks and have to make a couple careful decisions because, I mean, like Bobby mentioned, the Hun Bats, yes, a good Morrigan transformation, also as a jump for the Awilix. So you're both looking to get good options for Dardez to be able to impact fights on, and you're looking to not be as susceptible against this Sobek, against this Awilix, the pressure that the Ravens are bringing. The Dragons, though, with some of these bans coming through, I mean, taking the Nike off the board, the Yolar off the board, looking either for the jungler. I mean, I would like to save the jungle for the last pick here for me.
Hazer, what does the dynamic look like going into the final 4 picks now that the last bans have been locked in?
Yeah, I'm curious about this.
He'll do
Ullr
it
ban.
too, so you know, find him and he'll help you out. Sorry, Hazer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious about this Ullr ban, honestly. The Dragons, that's a god. I don't feel like we've seen that at all. Is this some insider info, maybe? The Dragons think the Zapman has a strong Ullr in the pocket, perhaps. They get rid of that. Now they need their support pick. I think Terra's looking pretty great here. Knock-up immunity for the Sobek and the Awilix. Really, really strong in that aspect. But it will be a jungle pickup, Nemesis, and they save the support pickup for last. Mike may be looking for something a little bit spicy here, Bobby.
Yeah, and Aphrodite is still an available god for him if he does want to opt for that. My only question with this Dragon's comp is if they opt for that, 1, they don't have great engage, very low CC, really just relying on Afro Kiss, and 2, they just still don't have that Morrigan transform that I'm personally looking for. Nem is a one-off by yourself or focusing out one character. It's not really what you want with the Morrigan. You want to be able to get in there, transform into something safe. Maybe he's really just looking to turn into that Sobek after getting that engage, and then they're looking to just dive the Ravens comp. But diving a Baba is just not something I'd usually want to do.
Not a lot of room for error after game number 1. Feels like we were moving very quickly through picks and bans at the beginning of the day. It's usually these last 4 where things slow down a little bit. Frog, you getting the idea that the Nemesis has maybe thrown a bit of a question mark to the Ravens?
Yeah, I'm a little bit off-put by the pick myself. A lack of CC on the Dragons, as Bobby mentioned, but look on the Ravens side, that soul lane lock-in, we saw Haddix dominate on this pick and on just with Warriors in the soul lane, a ton of pressure. This Danza, though, I mean, that shocks me.
Hazer, Danza locked in for Zapman in game 1. What's the read?
So Danzaburou recently got a buff. He now has mitigations from everything, not just auto attacks when he's using that 3. So going to be more powerful in boxing matches, more powerful in team fights. But this character is so all in. Steve, he likes to drop an 0-7 every so often. Danzaburou, definitely a character capable of that.
And it's a very good matchup into this Hachiman. The Hachiman, when he gets you low, he wants to be able to ult onto you to take that fight. Danzaburou wants you to come fight him. He wants to be the one that's fighting on his 3. And then he also, if the fight is going bad, he can look to use his rocket to get out of there. I really do love this pick. This Danzaburou, not something we've seen really at all recently, but with that buff that Hazer's speaking about, I like it in a comp like this.
Remember, Coast told Zap to be ready to be on the back foot, be under his tower. Maybe Danza is an answer to what he heard on stage. Atlas, the final lock-in, Frog, for the Jade Dragons. You now get a look at their full 5. What is this composition telling you?
That's a pick that PolarBearMike has gone back to time and time again. I mean, it tells me that they are running forward. Nemesis wants to go in off this Osiris engage. Atlas wants, I mean, we've seen Mike build more damage items on this support pick than he builds tank items as games have gone late. And so I expect both of these tanks to be frontline picks for the Dragons. And then, I mean, Dardez just being there invisible, using the sentry wards, trying to catch somebody out in a bush or something like that. And I think the Dragons are looking to be right in the faces of the Ravens.
Remember, through picks and bans, it felt like there were a couple of picks early that threw us for a bit of a loop. We wondered what would be answered later in the draft. It was the Awilix on one side, it was the Morrigan on the other side. Hazer, in your mind, has the picture around this Morrigan been made a bit more clear? There's some obvious options in your mind for the transformations?
I wouldn't say obvious. I think Dardez is one of the players who plays Morrigan a lot for her base character and maybe isn't so worried about the transformation here. I think Nem, as Bobby mentioned earlier, is still one of the stronger ones. Bellona could be okay as well. It's a decent one for him, but there's nothing that jumps out as like, I go deep into a team fight, I transform into a tank with a big ult, and I do Morrigan things, you know? That's the kind of classic Morrigan playstyle. I don't feel like that's there for Dardez, but I also don't really think he needs it. I think he can run this character in the base stance and still control games.
And Bobby, I want to go to you about the other pick, the Awilix. A lot built around it now, both on its own team and the opposing team. How dynamic does this pick look, given the other 9 characters in the game?
I think this Awilix pick will be the defining pick in this game. Ooh. I think a lot of what Scream is going to be able to do is off the back of his play, but I also think it's off the back of his entire team, how they play around him. The Dragons comp is obvious with what it wants to do. It wants to run it down, kill the backliners. It's still obvious what the Ravens comp is, but it's so much easier to do. Hit a knockup, get the pull beads, and I think if Scream can get off to a nice little early game run, maybe even just farm up faster than the Nem can, I think they're putting themselves into a really good spot to, you know, snowball it a little bit.
Question is, Frog, is that dynamic in your mind very similar between LASBRA and Scream? You know, is the story maybe the same for both sides?
Yeah, I think that LASBRA is going to be a little bit more delayed in getting involved, but that's just nature Nemesis, nature the other side. Awilix definitely more likely to get involved early.
Lots on the line in this one. It's game 1 of a best of 3, and we'll go to your casters to kick it off.
Thank you so much. Over on the desk, game number 1 of our second semifinal about to kick off. It's J-Max Mifflin here to bring the action for the Highland Ravens and the Jade Dragons. For the Jade Dragons, we haven't seen them in such a long time, Mifflin. Do they have any fans out in the audience? Are there any Jade Dragons fans even out here at this point?
No.
No, apparently not.
Hold on.
Wait. They're starting to build up a little bit. Okay. Well, what about the Highland Ravens? You know, we just saw them last week. Are there any Highland Ravens fans out there? Woo. We're starting to hear them now.
Zap diff.
Everybody's out there rooting for Zapman. We'll see if he can bring some success to the Ravens as they go into game number 1. Again, it's J-Mac Mifflin and Doug, as always, here to bring the action for our second quarterfinals matchup. And I think it's important to even kind of start with the Dragons. They qualified in all the way back in November was the last time that we saw these guys. Haven't got to see what they can really do on the new patch yet. Haven't seen what Nika's capable of, going back to the style of warrior play. Seeing a lot of those mages now kind of cycled out of that lane.
Yeah, I think Nika is maybe one of the biggest fans of that change. Was very vocal about this, by the way. Not a fan of playing mages every single time. So Osiris, Bellona, the standards, the Amaterasu, things like that, being back in the soul lane, certainly something the Jade Dragons soul lane are excited about. I like this composition on both sides, though, J-Mac. In particular, I think the Death highlights it very well. The Highland Ravens jungler Scream on this Awilix. A lot of weight on his shoulders. I've been a major proponent of this pick. Has really, really good early game pressure. Has the ability to establish pace and some clear targets on the other side. I think Dardez probably in some trouble throughout the early.
We'll have to keep our eyes on Dardez on this Morrigan, because that's another thing that Des brought up, was no really good kind of immediate transformation targets. Typically you look at your junglers, sometimes you maybe look at enemy mages for that kind of confirmation, but we'll kind of have to see exactly what Dardez decides to go to. But I think they're right to highlight saying that Dardez really does just love base Morrigan style play. Not very often that he's looking for those ideal transformations. Zapman is low, 100 HP. Banner is down, Coast puts him down. He says, you're gonna sit in the tower this game.
He called it in the interview and he brings it here. First wave knocks him down. Old man Zapman taking a back seat. And it's just simple aggression there. Pull in from Mike and Coast. Connects the Jutsu stun, and from there, that's all she wrote. Worst case scenario, it's both relics down for the Highland Ravens duo lane. It could just happen again.
Everything down for the Jade Dragons, too. This is going to be a very dicey duo for both squads, but now Zapman's got to sit under that tower exactly where VaporishCoast and PBM want to keep Zap this entire game. And another point that was brought up is just, you know, this Danzaburou, we have not really seen him. Even after the buffs, didn't feel like we'd see much. We'll always keep eyes on Scream. You never know what this guy's going to do. And with this Awilix pick, we saw Scream pick it up during playoffs. Didn't go the typical build path that any other jungler was going.
We don't want to talk about Scream's build. He comes out of the booth and says, you know I was cooking, right? Yeah. Kin size, I believe it was Phalanx as well. Just very unorthodox build. That's Scream's MO, though. Always goes a little bit off the beaten path. So we'll keep our eyes on that itemization across the board. I'm expecting largely the standard here. This doesn't seem to me to be a draft from the Jade Dragons that should dictate Screammmmm going something unorthodox.
Already with that first kill for the Dragons, where do we see the continued pressure? For now, it has just been in the duel and keeps Zapman back, but only level 3s between them, so not too much has been gained for the Jade Dragons off of this first blood. It's really only been that first blood bounty separating these two squads.
And so far, VaporishCoast playing well around his pressure. I wonder which of these supports decides to rotate out first. Mike generally likes to be involved in that mid lane really early on, loves facilitating Dardez. I said he thinks he's one of the best mid laners in the world.
Scream blinks over, waiting for the flip, but LASBRA's able to dash away. Now it's Haddix who gets stunned out instead. Good tether by Nika, keeps the enemy solo laner at bay. But that is going to be a set of beats down for LASBRA now.
Get used to seeing that interaction, especially throughout the early game. LASBRA does not want to fight Screammmmm, not just yet. Later on, full 6 slotted, things get a little bit different. Throughout the early, Screammm's domain.
Invaded purple buff. Zapman trying to step up. To start is clear on the buff, but PBM's just standing by. Goes ahead and grabs Chester. Is just going to walk down at Zapman and try and keep the camp his way. Zapman throws down the bottle. Mike gets taunted back. With Hurriwind around the corner, should at least guarantee the purple buff now for the Ravens. But I mean, this is just typical old-fashioned Jade Dragon style of play. Get that lead in one of your lanes and just keep up that pressure.
But talk about the timing of that pressure. Mike delays the Ravens so significantly. It grabs you free neutral camps. You lose maybe 3 minions of tower worth of gold as well. The Highland Ravens dual lane slowly bleeding, even though they've actually confirmed their own buff.
Hurriwind able to steal the shield buff, a bit mistimed from Mike and Coast, and now it's Hurriwind who can play aggressive towards enemy purple. But Coast and Mike, they're going to go ahead and pull that buff all the way back to the tower, so not much that Hurry or Screammmmm can do. Now level 5 on that Awilix. Beads back up for both the dual lane. Keep eyes on when LASBRA may step up, because they're still down for 90 seconds against Screammmmm.
Take a peek at LASBRA's build as well. We've seen Atalantas in that slot pretty frequently. Helps out with chasing out your kills, but you need to find a kill to find the full value of that item. So keep your eyes on him. I imagine we see LASBRA likely make his rotations over towards that dual lane. You've got decent interactions in the Sobek. For the most part, he's going to pluck initiate, go into lurking in the waters, and pray that he's tanky enough to walk out. Nemesis strips defense, makes it that much easier to jump on Hurriwind, punish some poor positioning.
Let's see where Screammmmm elects to continue to put his pressure. Is it just find LASBRA, chase him out through the jungle? Do you try and help out your solo laner? You know, Nika's been having a decent time. Now with Eagles rally down for Haddix, could be a potential target for LASBRA to go over and maybe help out, but I mean, Screammmmm has been on this buff the moment it spawns up. They're not giving Nika an inch to breathe on that buff.
And it's not like Haddix needs to hold on to that ultimate. How concerned is he about a rotation from LASBRA? Not very. Screammmmm spots him out in the jungle there. LASBRA clearly makes eye contact as well, so should be a fizzle on the aggression. Maybe a little bit more on that right-hand side.
Do see Dardez also grouping up over in mid at the time. So around those mid heartbeats, the left ones are up, but Jade Dragons nowhere in position to try and stop that. And now all the lead that the Jade Dragons had gold-wise has slanted itself all the way back over to the Highland Ravens, where in fact, we have the Highland Ravens now in very small gold lead at this point, but the fact that Jade Dragons had all that pressure and they just couldn't get anything done with it.
It's interesting, too, where that lead starts to establish itself. Screammmmm now slightly pulling ahead of LASBRA, which is something you would come to expect in this matchup. You've got a clear advantage on Awilix, so ability to control the neutrals a little bit better as Mike nearly finds the pull onto Zapman there. Maybe would have been able to strip away those beads. I'm really waiting for LASBRA to hit that 2-item power spike. It feels like the Jade Dragons right now just playing without a jungler, waiting for him to farm up.
And what is kind of that ideal second item for LASBRA? You know, going with this Atalantas, a bit more auto-attack centric. Is it another thing similar, like an Executioner, Kinsize? Like, what's kind of that next go-to for LASBRA?
We've seen some variations in the Nemesis build. I do go towards that Executioner pretty consistently, especially if you have other physical attackers that'll really benefit from it. So VaporishCoast, Nika as well, once that team fight starts up, could really benefit from an additional penetration. But for me, maybe I'm a little bit old now, showing my age. Jotun's Wrath, 20% CDR, power, pen, it's everything you want.
Just a good all-rounded item. Keep eyes on LASBRA throughout his build. And also, I'm still just going to keep watching Screammmmm. See if he goes back towards the build he did during playoffs, or see if he kind of more falls into the more traditional standardized build that we've been seeing from some of the other players like Johnny adapting what they've kind of pulled through. But Zapman in danger. 2-man rotation his way. Does get into leaf in time, but it's pulled out of it immediately. LASBRA cuts off the path, and it's a second kill onto Zapman. The Jade Dragons striking the duo once more.
You just can't walk away from the Atlas ultimate. Danzaburou easy to knock him out of that leaf form. Zapman much too far forward on his own. Great punish there from the Jade Dragons, putting a lot of attention in that duo lane. The ability of this composition from the Dragons to go through Gold Fury is going to start to rear its head very soon. The Ravens need to be able to match that pressure.
Mike went back to base. This is 2v1. Hurry's still in dangerous territory. Goes into the waters. Crashed out immediately, but just to get that dash cooldown back for himself. So the support bailed out just a little bit by fortunate back timing on his part, having Mike go back a little too early.
Yeah, Mike, he got his job done. There's not really a whole lot of reason for him to stick around. Surprised to see Hurriwind even go for that pull there. I mean, no one on his side to follow up. Just trying to slow down the farm, be annoying. And I believe it was PBM himself that had said, if the enemy team thinks I'm annoying, I'm playing support the best I can.
That's all you could ever ask for in support, is to be crowned as being an annoying player to go against. Feels like every time we pan over to this solo lane, though, Myth, Nika's sitting at half HP, maybe even less. The bullying that Haddix has had on this Bellona started to do its number towards Nika's health bar, but maybe the fortunate part for Nika is that the furthest that Scream is really going into any of these lanes is either right to this totem or towards that cooldown buff.
Yeah, Scream hasn't had too many opportunities. We saw the attempted gravity surge just earlier, but PBM feeds in that first slot, incredibly safe. It would have burned through that CC. And I think it's a smart answer to the Ravens' composition at that. Looking at it, I'm not seeing a whole lot of AoE CC, or not consistent AoE CC anyway. Zapman's got a bit of it with the sake bottle. Haddix with Eagle's Rally, but small circles. It's pretty difficult for the Highland Ravens to burn through all the CC immunity to Jade Dragons, ultimates and beads included.
And you even look to the opposite side for the Dragons, and there's not really a whole lot to be able to punish from. There's no leaps to really be able to pull from that Awilix, so not a whole lot of threat in that way. Group up around mid, LASBRA's half health. Scream jumps over the wall back to safety, and Venenu up into the house. Gets some damage onto Dardez. Dardez feeling a little bit low, but he goes right back in, transforms to the Bellona, picked up in the sky. Weather step is not enough, and Scream goes down. The group up from the Jade Dragons saves their jungler, takes down Scream, but now it's Haddix trying to get active against LASBRA, and now Nika chases him down. BBM walking through the mid, plucked back by Hurriwind, but not quite enough follow-up damage from Venenu to take down this tank.
Talk about ice in Dardez's veins. Decides to walk through the fires of Ven, transform, and then up down at 1/100th HP. Doesn't have any concern in the world. Trusts that the rest of his team is nearby, and the Jade Dragons always been known about that mid 3v3. They love getting involved exactly there. Great play from Dardez, and the transformation target into that Bellona, I think, telling for how the Jade Dragons want to play these engagements. The desk called it out. It's dive.
Coast, though, might be in danger. Hurriwind on the way. Beads still available for the Hachi. Coast will quickly jump onto the mounted archery, bail himself out, and save his relic for the next rotation over. But Scream has not been too apt to go over to the lane. It really feels like Scream hasn't been in a lane very much just yet. Maybe we'll see him get involved over on the left side. It's Hurriwind and Zap keeping Coast and Mike now at their own tier 1.
Yeah, Scream hyper-focused on his ability to just farm up the map consistently. It is a very strong 2-item power spike for Awilix. Getting that hi-rez available boosts your burst incredibly. Gives you essentially 100 to 0 capacity for squishier targets. Helps out a little bit against some of these tanks, but I'm not sure we're going to hit a portion of this game where Scream hits Nika and is happy with the numbers he's seeing.
It's only getting worse from here. It's double physical defense for Nika. Same thing for Haddix on the opposites. I don't think we'll see these junglers anywhere over here at probably once this level 12 mark hits, that second item finished up for Nika. So in that case, if you are Scream, if you are LASBRA, which lane do you put focus on, or is this just a sit there and focus on your farm game?
If it were just a few minutes earlier, I'd say focusing Mike would be a pretty decent option, as he elected to go for Prophetic in first slot. Takes a little while to stack up that item. Don't exactly get the full defensive capacity of it. As Hurry, where are you at?
Caught out in the jungle, and LASBRA, Slice and Dice is good. Killing spree already for the jungler of the Jade Dragons, and they might just go to the Gold Fury. They get the Oracles, but maybe just one too many bodies of the Highland Ravens lurking through the jungle. Jade Dragons, they'll call away from the objective, just get their 1 kill.
And the Ravens are just all the way around the map, getting caught out here, there. The Jade Dragons, much more concise in their positioning. I feel like they've always got a buddy. Someone's always with somebody, as Coast taking the 1v1.
Zapman, though, he's walked away from his grass, and VaporishCoast could try and turn this fight, because Mike is just around the corner. Ultimates are both down. The beads are down from Coast, but he drops the banner, and it's not far enough, and he's just out of range for the in-hand. Zapman playing aggressively, and for his money, he gets the beads away from Coast, and that might set up for another rotation now, because Hurriwind and Screammmmm are over here. Mike picked up just a bit. Gravity Surge gets the beads away from him, and Mike can safely charge back towards his duo.
Wow, that was great positioning there from Mike, just to avoid the feather step from Screammmmm. If you get your dash canceled there, that's your life every single day of the week. So good timing on the beads. Screammmmm tries to min-max his positioning by moving away, but maybe he can catch him here.
He's doing his best to stay alive. Hurry stunned down. A lot of hope to the support of the Highland Ravens. It is that first beacon going over to the Jade Dragons. Let's see them in just a few minutes once we get to that second beacon fight. But we saw very early rotations now from some of these soul laners to maybe try and get active, see exactly what can pan out around these objectives, because it feels like less often than it used to is where we would see the big group ups around these beacons. It used to be once they came out, everybody wants beacon. I'm getting all 10 players on the map there. Now these soul laners a bit more apt to stay in their lane.
The rotation this early isn't exactly worthwhile unless you know you're going to get a fight off of it. Then it's really, we're at the beacon, but we're fighting for the Gold Fury. Speaking of Gold Fury, good luck to the Jade Dragons trying to sneak that one away if they ever try and approach it. Look at the ward coverage from the Highland Ravens. Seems to me Zapman made a call out. Guys, they put pressure on my lane, and I'm kind of sick of it.
Fury started, and it's Mike with the ultimate right on the center of it. LASBRA ults Venenu trying to keep him out, but the ultimate's already too early from the Dragons. Now they got to try and confirm gold, but with Hurriwind nearby, they don't have the secure to do so. The Highland Ravens have repelled the Jade Dragons around gold.
I like that call from the Dragons. You don't want to leave it on a coin toss, especially against lurking in the waters. The Morrigan, great as a magical assassin, not exactly an objective secure, so don't leave that up to chance. Instead, played a little bit more defensive, a little bit slower, and you at least heat check the Highland Ravens. See how quick that response time was, burn through some resources, get rid of the teleport from Haddix as well.
Ooh, big damage already from Venenu. Dardez is going to have to go back to base now. We do see that Venenu's already starting to build into that prophetic cloak. Should have that very shortly, and then at that point, the guessing game comes down to who on the Dragons can kill him. With so many members of the Dragons going back to base or scattering to the wind, the Highland Ravens go right for the Gold Fury and see if they can pull this objective and grab it for themselves. They'll get gold. The Dragons now answer with a Pyromancer. Unfortunate for them is that Haddix is already there, slowing down their damage output on it. Pyromancer down to a third. Nika on the way. Triple ultimate from Haddix. Not enough to steal Pyro, and not enough to lock the Jade Dragons down. The Ravens get one objective. The Dragons trade out with another.
Clean win to the Highland Ravens until we see where that runic bomb goes. Thought maybe Haddix had the steal. The stun was so well placed. Scourge maybe could have taken it away, but used it just a little bit earlier on. The Highland Ravens have been doing such a phenomenal job, J-Mac, just in macro farm. They've not got a single kill just yet. But always been even or favored to the Highland Ravens, barring the 30 seconds after the first blood. I just think the Jade Dragons are really struggling to find where to push their lead. They need to get VaporishCoast out of that lane. A lot of the aggression has always been rooted through Coast on this team. We even heard in the interview, it's a lane that you can play through consistently. But Zapman took the interview as well too hard. You want me in my tower? Fine, I'll also play a safe pick.
Gonna sit at the tower and essentially make you stay here. So as you want to keep me on that tower, you've got to be in the lane to make sure that that happens. Zapman runs into 2 in the jungle. We'll back up to the safety of that tier 1 tower.
He's looking comfortable, ain't he?
Feels like it's right at home for Zapman at this point. Not in in a rude way, but like Zapman's like, yeah, I'm just chilling. No problem with me. I'll sit here. I'll farm up, because this has just been kind of their MO. You know, Zapman, even on his time all the way back when, you know, the Atlantis Leviathans and teams before that, is I might go 0-7, but look at my carry over here. This guy's going 7-0. What matters if I die 100 times? As long as my team is able to win off it, that's all that matters to Zapman at the end of the day. 2v2 around solo lane. Not really gonna fizzle on it much here.
Yeah, not a whole lot of aggression anywhere on the map just yet. And as the game goes on, each one of these kills starts to gain a little bit of importance. If we see this pace continue to that 25-minute mark, one team fight's all it's gonna take to completely close out this game. Fortunately for both sides, structures stand. All 6 on either. So would be a little while until we see him be able to approach some of those Phoenixes. Instead, now you have to evaluate, well, if it's a pick-based game, if we're not going to have the team fight, who's got an easier time finding those picks? And I'd argue, to a certain extent, it's probably the Jade Dragons. Dardez on this Morrigan, the ability to just stealth up, burn through resources, and then transform into a tank and then leave, would generally be something you could exploit if the game were a bit faster. Changeling, such a long cooldown, but no fights in 17. I think he could do whatever he wants.
He's from LASBRA. Will there be a turn and burn now from the Dragons? Started to group up in the left side jungle, but not going to get too much more aggressive. And kind of going back to Venenu on this Baba Yaga. Now Prophetic Cloak starting to stack up. Means that he's going to get really tanky really quick. The Jade Dragon going to try and exploit that weakness early. Already forcing the home sweet home out of Venenu. Nika tanking this one up, no problem. It's a fight over in the jungle though. Scream jumps over the wall, and it's a follow-up by Nika. Beam from PBM to try and chase down, but the Jade Dragons have spent a whole lot of resources to get to the fight. Now what do they have for the fight itself? Zapman on the rocket, forces the ultimate out of VaporishCoast. He's on the run. Nika frontlining, but Dardez at half HP, transforms into the Bellona. Now it's dangerous business for the Highland Ravens. Venenu on death's door, but somebody's got to put him down. It's Mike to do so, and Coast with a double. Scream able to grab one and make it two. Three still standing on the side of the Ravens, while the two of the Dragons turn tail and run.
What a back and forth engagement, but it's Hurriwind that gets it all started with that pull onto Mike. Mike gets the peel from his team. Dardez transforms into a tank and says, I'm right there with you. Difference is, Mike stays a tank. Dardez only gets to be one for so long. Left in no man's land, an immediate turnaround from the Highland Ravens, but not before LASBRA able to hit a pay dirt on a few priority targets himself. Hard to say which one just wins out cleanly. Mid for mid, even trade, ADC for jungle. Considering Coast is already nursing a pretty nice lead, getting Zapman off the map, it's pretty nice for Coast to get even further ahead.
As this game continues to go on, that kill on Venenu gets harder and harder. He already lived for way too long. What tools do the Jade Dragons have to be able to dive this Baba Yaga once that Prophetic Cloak is online and she becomes way tankier?
You know, Baba Yaga is actually interesting in that you can have the exact same answer to a Baba Yaga as you do as like a Cthulhu or a Zhonghui. Oh, you went into your ultimate? What if you had less defenses? What if you were just a little bit squishier? That's the solution provided by LASBRA on this Nemesis. It could be that you just run him down afterward. The only thing that slows you down is the initial knockup from the home sweet home transformation. We saw that there. We then had to early cancel the ultimate, I believe, trying to get into that leap.
Scream uses his ultimate so he didn't get pulled back by Mike because his bead's still down for 60 seconds. Starting to get a group up over in mid. Even Zapman rotating out of the lane. Lost his tier 1 tower. Said, okay, well, I'm free to roam anywhere that I want. Went for the mid-Harpy camp with that Fury and the Pyromancer back up. Starting to see both these teams get a hard group up for themselves. Jade Dragons all towards the Pyromancer. It's only Hurriwind there to try and defend the objective. Meanwhile, for the Highland Ravens, they'll take the trade again. Say, okay, Dragons have the Pyromancer. We'll go for the Gold Fury, but maybe the Dragons make the faster call and go towards Fire Giant. The Ravens only have Hurry here, and Hurry's not going to be there much longer. Killing spree for VaporishCoast. Haddix and Venenu on the way. It's only going to be these two to defend the Fire Giant, and I don't think the Highland Ravens are even going to step up to defend. The Jade Dragons get Pyro, 2 kills, and a Fire Giant.
Such a smart call from the Jade Dragons. They know the Ravens are on the Gold Fury. Send anyone over there, and there's no way they get there in time to defend the Fire Giant itself, especially after Hurriwind just peeks around the corner, stays around a little bit too long, and the Jade Dragons, they jump up in the jungle.
Mike tanking the tower, minions on the way, and the Jade Dragons will grab tier 2. Nika pulled back by Scream, but not a whole lot of damage going Nika's direction. Only about a quarter of his health pushed away for the time. The Jade Dragons can fall back. No other objectives to go on the map because the Highland Ravens did the only other one that was standing.
And this Awilix is really struggling to find value. No pulls on high priority targets. Coast largely left alone. Dardez, he's been initiating more fights than he's had initiated on him. The Jade Dragons just have free reign of the map as it is. The Highland Ravens need to find an answer, and I think a lot of it will reside with Scream. The desk already highlighted how important he is to the pace of this game, but he needs to find someone on his own. If it's going to come down to these 5-on-5 engagements as we've seen, Scream's really going to struggle dealing significant damage, and in situations like this, that's when Scream gets a little bit unorthodox in the build. That's where we can start to see some of that tankiness develop, and considering I'm looking at a tower shield right now, we could be seeing Scream go back to his old ways.
The Phalanx might be just around the corner. The problem right now that Scream is having is every target he tries to pull with this ultimate has beads or is a tank. Hurriwind and the rest of the squad just not able to pull these relics away from the Jade Dragons, and it's essentially making Screammmmm kind of play on hard mode with this pick.
Yeah, you could have Hurriwind, I suppose, go for those plucks a little bit more consistently, but now the Highland Ravens playing at a deficit need to be concerned about a 5-stacked Fire Giant team. If I pluck them and they have beads, do I just die? That's a quote from iRapper, by the way. Said it all back 3-4 years ago, and it's still true. Hurry is not exactly tanky just yet.
Only 3 items into the build, and one of those is just raw HP at this point. LASBRA and Screammmmm, bit of a tussle in the jungle, but this might be the one beneficial matchup for Screammmmm as he's 2 levels up over LASBRA. Not even going to take that chance to go for the 1v1. Instead, it's just Nika running down Screammmmm under the tier 2 tower while LASBRA chops away at it. Haddix with the Scourge, make sure that the damage to the tower is not that much. And Mike, hold on, getting low, use the ultimate. Hurriwind's gonna chase them. And Venenu with the home sweet home. Now it's Dardez at half HP. They're just gonna keep on chasing Zapman. One auto away, throws out the sake bottle, but it's Haddix around the corner. The clothesline onto the carry. Coast has nothing left he can do as Haddix runs him down, surrounded by the entirety of the Ravens. Coast stands his ground for as long as he can, but Screammmmm is there to send him to the afterlife, and now Nika just gonna be chased away by 3.
The Highland Ravens get a miracle defense there. The Jade Dragons play the map so split up. They've been winning out consistently in the 5-on-5. I'm surprised to see them take a 3v3 on left and a 2v2 on right. I mean, Zapman, of course, does so much more damage than I think anyone expects, essentially, taking that 2v1 on tower line. Mike tries to tank up that tower, but not EFG, means that tower is going to stand for a while. And I believe Mike maybe loses 60 to 70% of his HP to PvE alone. The Highland Ravens forcing the Jade Dragons back. Still with Fire Giant on 3, though. You have to show a little bit of respect.
Nika's going to try and scare the Highland Ravens away from this beacon, but the Jade Dragons are also standing right behind him to make sure he's got the room to do so. And if you want to take a look at maybe why Zapman's doing so much more damage, it's double crit, but not the double crit that we've come to expect from the Hunter builds. Usually, it's the Demon Blade into Deathbringer, but it's fail not in that 3rd slot for Zapman.
If you're going to start every fight by ulting in, I think that's a great way to go in the build. Nika pulled back, thought maybe be able to force out that beads with the gravity surge, but Screammmmm wants it to hold on to that ultimate, keep that threat available for maybe someone that doesn't have beads currently. Keep your eyes on Dardez, keep your eyes on Mike. Even Mike at this point, likely susceptible to a pull, so long as Zapman is there, so long as Ven's ready for the follow-up. The Highland Ravens now starting to pose a little bit of threat towards the front line of the Jade Dragons.
Just as quickly as the Dragons grouped up around Pyro, they dispersed for the time, but now looking for a group up once more. But last time the Dragons went for a Pyro pull, they went straight to the Fire Giant. I don't think the Highland Ravens will make the mistake of trading Pyro for Gold Fury any longer, knowing it was.
It was just that perfect information of knowing the Ravens weren't there in numbers. If it's a 5-on-5, the Jade Dragon's not crazy enough to just do it in the face of the Ravens. That was a calculated decision with all the information on the map. Good ward coverage on that left-hand side earlier affords them that decision-making. Dardez considering a step forward there. Really has been leading the charge on a lot of these engagements, and with Polynomicon now has 100-0 potential in just base stance. Go for the stun, the dark aspects, get your dark omen, and all of a sudden one auto attack and Zapman's off the map, or Ven's off the map.
See a bit of a group around Fire Giant from the Jade Dragons. LASBRA hanging out in mid. Finally has hit that level 20 points, so able to upgrade that starter item for himself. A couple of the other members of Jade Dragons, or at least just Dardez, still hasn't had that chance to go back and finish up his. But it's a fire pull now by the Jade Dragons. 3 of the Ravens nearby, 1 on the way. Venenu already being launched at by Mike and Nika. And Zapman does not have very far to go. He's being chased out, tethered away, and LASBRA knocks him off the map. But now it's LASBRA versus Screammmmm. Nika's got to go and bail out his jungler, but he's not going to be able to do so. Screammm's just got too much damage, and it might be Nika next on the chopping block. Half HP, still walking at the enemy, but Venenu stands his ground. No ultimate available to the Baba Yaga. For the time being, it's Mike pulling back. Hurriwind nearly delivers him to the team. But an disruption is in. The Screammmmm, like a maniac, walks into 4 and loses his life because of it. And now Hurry might go down as well. Zoned away for the time being. Haddix back on the scene. Dardez low. Venenu jumping in aggressively, but he hit the decoy. Sundown loses both relics and the rest of his health bar. Timeline pops just for the time, and is it enough to save him? Can he even get any damage? Dardez essentially taunting him in the backline, saying, please step further to your own death.
The Highland Ravens get over aggressive Scream with a wild man jump in, just trying to peel out for Hurry. Hurry's out. You're jumping into 4 on your own. Hurry decides to peel back in. Well, I can't just let Scream die. If he goes down, we can't fight back anywhere on the map. Trades his own life, 2 for 0, and the Jade Dragons then cleanly take the engagement afterward. Relic graveyard for the Highland Ravens. Alternate timeline off the map, and the Jade Dragons get to regroup first. 30 seconds for Ven on respawn. Takes about 15 seconds to walk there from base. I think we're just letting the Fire Giant go down again.
I think that's the call from the Ravens. Haddix the only one really in the vicinity to try and stop that, but it's low chance odds to take a Fire Giant. Not 0, but I don't think Haddix wants to walk too far forward, so Jade Dragons get their second Fire Giant of the game, 27 in, and really their first significant lead of this game as well. 6,000 gold up for the Dragons.
Let's figure out where the Jade Dragons start to put some of that siege, though. Previously, it was split all the way across the map. This time, I'd like to see them play at least a little bit closer. You could split up, 4-1, 3-2, that's fine, but stay in lanes that are connected, right? If you're in right, play in mid. If you're in left, play in mid. I think the answer is play in mid.
Play in mid.
So as long as you can get involved in a team fight, the Highland Ravens, I don't think we'll put up too much of a defense around these tier 2s. Ven can keep the waves out, but has to utilize that second ability, want to hold one of those potions in pocket. Maybe it's an all-in initiation style defense. Keep your eyes on Zapman. That rocket could be a difference maker.
Dragons might just like to play this one a bit slower. Still 20 seconds, never mind. Nika hits the gas pedal, goes right into the Phoenix line, thrown back into the hands of the entirety of the Ravens. And Nika is down to a quarter HP. He's got to try and walk through the door, but he can't. The towers are still up. The Phoenix are still there, and Coast goes down instead. Zapman puts him away, and Mike walks up to distract and bail out the rest of his squad, but it's 2 more down. Now it's the Highland Ravens with full advantage.
Jade Dragons fans are used to this situation, J-Max. Siege has been a weakness for this team for so long, and the Highland Ravens proving it once more on the defense. Fire Giant maintained on 2, but not the 2 you wanted on. Fire Giant on the Hunter is the most important, but Coast goes down first. Great play once more by Zapman. Scream isolates Nika at the tour, and all of a sudden now the Highland Ravens, who were thinking maybe on the back foot, maybe have to defend their Titan, starting to approach the throne room themselves.
It's 15 seconds until Coast is having over 20 till the remainder.
They have time.
Tier 2 down, and now it's on to the Phoenix. They still got a minion wave. I don't think the Ravens stick around any longer than that, so instead of losing a bird of their own, they turn it around and strip the entire mid lane away from the Dragons.
Fortunately for the Jade Dragons, silver lining is the buffs hadn't spawned just yet. They lost the fight so quickly, the Highland Ravens can't take anything more on the map. Pyromancer is a consolation prize. I'm sure just happy. Icing on the cake there for the Ravens. The Jade Dragons, they were so close to being able to find some sort of footing in that team fight. I think it goes all wrong with Nika's ultimate. That it just puts him too far into the back line of the Ravens. He's completely isolated, and then from there it's just pick your target. I'll take this one target here. Nika's on his own. I'll start to move slowly through the map forward from there. Great mobility from Zapman once more. The Jade Dragons have to find an answer. Clearly Nika's not winning the 1v1 up against Scream, but he could probably isolate Zap himself, jump onto him, play the sustain battle. We've seen Deathwalker try something earlier today, just like that. Back up, take a longer fight, play around the Death's Embrace. There are opportunities for the Jade Dragons besides just walking into the birds.
Well, the Dragons will get a Gold Fury, at the very least themselves. Still holding on to the Fire Giant for at least a couple more minutes for LASBRA and Dardez. And speaking of Dardez, what are some of the ideal, like, even transformation options? Is it just go into the Haddix, have that second tanky front line for you with the Bellona, that CC? Or do you start going into some of these more damage-oriented options?
For Dardez, it depends on positioning in the team fight, because we know Dardez is going to try and play that base stance first and foremost. So if you know you have the damage to completely 100-0 your target, we could see him go towards a Haddix transformation into the Bellona just for disengage. If you're chasing down, could even see a Scream transformation there. There are essentially no bad transformations, barring maybe an Atlas or a Sobek in some of these fights. So I would really keep my eyes on Warrior and Assassin transformations here for Dardez, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm mostly concerned about his ability to just play in that base stance. Feels like he's been too comfortable there.
Hurriwind a bit poked out. able to dash back to the rest of his team, but more than anything for Haddix, taking that bubble away from PBM, 60 seconds on that cooldown, and a very easy God to be able to remove that one off the map entirely. Walk up, hit Scourge, bubble is gone for 70. Lather, rinse, repeat anytime that you see Mike walk up to the front line.
Yeah, Mike has been doing a good job creating that space, though, hasn't he? Even here, putting some pressure on a Haddix. Seems to be a pretty significant difference in how tanky some of these frontliners are. Mike takes so much poke from Ven and has already completely resustained it, whereas Haddix, just one bit of damage towards him. He's around that 80% mark. The Highland Ravens have not been able to find fights in neutral territory just yet. The majority of their team fight wins have been on base defenses, first on left, now on right. You have to be able to take a 5v5 towards the center of the map if you want to confirm a Fire Giant. And now Enhanced Fire Giant means the Jade Dragons will have that much of an easier time sieging if they get it again.
And one storyline that always keeps coming up with Haddix, just feels like he can get so unkillable in these kinds of metas when you can get those warriors back in, those real tanky style of gods. It feels almost impossible to kill Haddix, and so far in game one, it hasn't been possible. Sitting at 1-0-4 right now for his team, and is really one of the ones that kind of get the Ravens going during a lot of their previous sets. When the rest of the team's falling apart, Haddix shows up on these beefy frontliners and just says, I will stand here, you have to get through me to get to the rest of my team.
He's been doing a good job of it, but it's the damage behind him that is the concern. Zapman's struggling to get into the back line unless he's playing on Phoenix. You can jump onto the rocket and join Haddix, but then you have to be concerned about the immediate turnaround potential of the Jade Dragons. Ven playing with decent range, but hasn't quite had enough DPS to legitimately knock down Nika or stop Mike from looking for these pulls. I'll really be keeping my eyes on the Highland Ravens' abilities to actually knock down frontline. That's one of the weaknesses of this crit build from Zapman. You do a lot of damage to squishies, but it doesn't seem like Nika cares.
Mike now no beads. Ultimate from Scream has been used. That's Haddix walking up towards the front line, just a zone to make sure that Hurriwind has an option out. Hurriwind not quite the same level to resustain, but that's the Ravens going to Pyromancer. The crits are melted to its health as Nika dies in the middle of 3. That's ultimate down for the Osiris, and Haddix will be just fine. Use his beads to stay alive for the time being. The Jade Dragons get a couple of very important abilities away from them.
And the Ravens not exactly willing to stand their ground there. Hurry, so low HP. Didn't want to look for the pluck. A pluck on a Nika from that position, though, would have at least burnt the beads, and if he doesn't utilize beads, gets thrown into 4 as he completely isolated himself, going in aggressive. Instead, he's just scary enough that the Ravens give up all their space.
Enhanced Fire Giant down to half. Mike goes right to the backline of Venenu into the home sweet home already. And meanwhile, it's Haddix versus 3, and he's kind of winning the team fight. He needs Hurriwind to bail him out. Nika trying to chase him down. Dardez thrown to the wolves, and Zapman knocks him away. Now LASBRA trying to get to the backline, but he just can't find a path through. Maybe to Venenu, maybe to Hurriwind, but that alternate timeline is back up for Ven. LASBRA now, no beads, a great pluck from Hurriwind.
Haddix on resustain, can join his team. Keep your eyes for that TP. Might just tank up that Fire Giant. Jade Dragons not healthy enough to contest. Maybe you send someone nearby for a Hail Mary steal. Or maybe you're not concerned about it at all. The Highland Ravens on full reset. Have plenty of time to play with here. 30 seconds on Dardez's respawn, and even once he gets there, won't have any relics to play with. Might be the Highland Ravens' first look at a Fire Giant play.
All 5 starting to group back up. As mentioned, 20 seconds till Dardez is back on the map. The Fire Giant got down to under half from the Jade Dragons, reset, and now it's the Highland Ravens in the driver's seat. There's 3 from the Dragons in the jungle, 1 lurking in from mid being LASBRA. Can he get in and get the damage done? Can a steal even happen? It's getting low, 10%. It's a coin toss, but it's gonna be a weighted one for the Highland Ravens, and now Nika pulled back. No beads available, all set, but Haddix will just chase him right down. No wall to walk through. It's Scream with the kill.
Jade Dragons playing without 1, and LASBRA still not on reset. Means that the Highland Ravens are fast enough here with EFG. They can just knock down this weakened mid-Phoenix immediately. Weakness of having the Morrigan on your team is a non-standard mage. Base defense doesn't look so good.
The Highland Ravens keep up push in mid.
Too many towers.
Or do you just go back and go to the towers? And the safer call is this tier 2. You still got 40 seconds to play without Nika. You might as well just strip whatever you can for free. Scream over the wall. Group up around left. They might just go for another Phoenix. Haddix and Hurriwind charging forward. Zapman only needs a couple of seconds with this bird. and we'll make short work of it.
Screammmmm, gravity surge for intimidation factor, keeps the Jade Dragons back as the second Phoenix falls down. And still 15 seconds left until Nika rejoins the land of the living. The Highland Ravens have made short work of the Jade Dragons base and can collect so much gold on map. Not that it matters nearly as much anymore. Majority of players approaching 6th slot of just about every starter item upgraded. We're talking about relics and potions, wards and the like for now. All that said, map state probably a permanent advantage for the Highland Ravens from here. The Jade Dragons gonna be contending with enhanced minion waves down the center and left-hand side. It's a simple answer for the Ravens. Where do you go? It's the only place left. Gotta run down right.
Divert the attention of the Jade Dragons any way that you can. The game plan for the Highland Ravens. Everybody starting to head back. Upgraded relics, the elixir of power now for Screammmmm, 3K spent for that extra damage boost. See if that can make it work for him. Now 6-2-1. It was a very rough start for Screammmmm to start this one out. Didn't look like it with a 2-1 slash line, but just couldn't get anything going. Now starting to find some of those ideal targets in these team fights and starting to lead that team to victory.
Yeah, just got that tankiness online and was like, okay, well, I'll just be a part of the front line with the rest of my squad. He's been playing right there with Haddix. He's been right there with Hurry. Just an additional threat of CC off the back of Tail Whip or a Pluck. And it's looked so good for the Highland Ravens. Whereas the Jade Dragons now, even with a little bit more AoE on their side with OdysseusBow pickup for VaporishCoast, have been struggling to spread the damage evenly in the team fight. Haven't quite got enough single target that they could just stop Hurriwind on his Pluck, but haven't gotten enough AoE to stop everyone around Hurriwind either.
Firemancer for the Highland Ravens. Not much that the Jade Dragons do to try and stop this one. And now that means a Runic Bomb in pocket. As long as somebody goes over and picks that one up. It was Hurriwind who has it for himself. Now over to Tier 2 Tower, the last permanent structure still standing for the Dragons, but LASBRA's nowhere to be seen. He's over on the left side defending against the minions. Pushed them far enough up to where it's bought his team a bit of time. But the Ravens and Zapman specifically are doing so much damage to these towers. Again, he only needs a few seconds. But Dardez just tries to make the hero play himself. Dive to the back line. Zapman is just going to get bullied out by the Dragons. So Screammmmm. LASBRA's going to chase them. The 1v1 will go down with Coast coming out on top. And now it's Nika zoning away too. Venenu low, but Haddix takes out Dardez on the wild. 3 versus 2 to the pack. The alternate timeline is good, but how much can it buy for Venenu? He gets stunned out of his jump, and Mike punishes him for it. Hurriwind places the Runic Bomb for safety, but there's nowhere left for him to go. Haddix can't fight against all 4. It's the kid who knocks him down.
Minions already in the Titan room. J-Mac, Hurry, not able to make his way back to base. Can the Jade Dragons end from this position? Seems to think so, doesn't it? Just running down that right-hand side. Nika has teleport, can rejoin his team. I think they might go for the end here.
It's only going to be Hurriwind up for another 20 seconds. They've got to be quick. They've got to be decisive with what they want to do before Zapman is back up. The rocket will be available. So maybe for the Jade Dragons, just go for this right side Phoenix. Still 10 seconds on Zap. 15 for Screammmmm.
No way.
I think their call is get a bird and bail out.
Yeah, no way. Now with Zapman on the respawn. And speaking of Zapman, eviscerated in that team fight. Dardez hero play leads the charge on Phoenix line and just strategically removes him. Transforms into Nemesis just to get the chase down potential. Can't really figure out which leaf he is. Doesn't matter. Slice and dice essentially the whole lane right there. Knocks out 3 and finds Zapman in the 3. From there, the Highland Ravens spread across the map. Screammmmm loses his 1v1 in the jungle. Hurriwind trying his best to peel out with Haddix, but eventually at 10% HP, can't blame the guy for just fully escaping the scene. Seems to me, whichever team starts the siege, probably not going to be in a great position 30 seconds later.
That's the Highland Ravens. Pick up in jungle. Fire Giant's about to respawn, and all Phoenix is back up. Now for the Jade Dragons. Still one more Fire Wave in left to deal with. The Jade Dragons, do you even let this one go? It's enhanced Fire Giant. You've got all 5 standing. If you lose 1 Phoenix in trade, not the end of the world. I think the smart call by the Dragons, send a few people up, but you need to make sure there's at least 1 person dealing with that left side wave.
Nobody there for now on the Jade Dragons. Nika starting his back, but I'm not sure he even gets there in time, J-Mac. Might just be that he shows himself on map and loses the bird. And that's the case, just too slow to get there. Meanwhile, Fire's low.
Down to 10% health. Mike's gonna try and steal it, can't do so. The Highland Ravens get the Fire Giant. It's Haddix in the backline, trying to zone away the damage deals, but Nika is gonna do just the same in the Highland Ravens backline. Remember, now there's no timeline available to the Ravens mid laner, so the Ravens, they'll get the enhanced Fire Giant, and they're gonna bail out as quick as they can. LASBRA walks too far forward, eats poke from both Ben and Zapman, and that'll send the Jade Dragons back home.
Titan never allowed to regenerate as that left side Phoenix goes down. EFG gonna simplify the siege on an already weakened mid-bird. The Jade Dragons struggle on base defense with just compositions. It can't be poke, it's gotta be that all-in that we saw on right. If that's the case, can you all-in a split engagement? If the Highland Ravens are concerned about that true 5-on-5, why play it? 4-1 split, have Screammmmm play the center of the map, trust that he's at least can distract LASBRA. It's not exactly the most favorable matchup for Awilix from here, but with Serrated Edge, Lifesteal, and Fire Giant Resustain, you don't need to win the fight, you just have to be there and force someone to respond to you. The Highland Ravens in a very good spot from here. I'm watching the Jade Dragons closely. Playing pretty far outside the base, but haven't pushed out those left side waves. Could be, we've seen it before. Maybe a group up, try and catch the Ravens slipping in the jungle.
The Dragons are really concerned about the Sobek Awilix combo. Not only beads on every single member of the Jade Dragons, but even 3 different sets of that Magi's Blessing afforded to the mid 3v3 of LASBRA, Dardez, and PBM. 3 players who, not only in their own relic department, but with their build, are just making sure to try and negate what Screammmmm, what Hurriwind can do, and buy themselves that extra level of safety.
Yeah, so keep your eyes on them. I wonder, though, what's going to be the tipping point, J-Mac? What is it exactly that the Highland Ravens can do completely confirm a siege? With no runic bombs in pocket as it stands, you don't exactly have the ability to immediately burst down a bird. LASBRA's done a great job here pushing through mid, so no minion waves to play with there either for the Highland Ravens. Right back to the scene of the crime. Won't even go through the weakened bird first. Instead, 5-on-5 on right.
Last time it was Dardez who kick-started the fight for the Dragons, just walked up in the middle of everybody's stealth, put Zapman at half HP. And then it was all she wrote for the Dragons. Hurriwind's gonna try and get it done. Pull onto Nika. 40% of his health gone in the blink of an eye, but Zapman can't get any damage on the bird. Instead, it's all damage over towards Haddix instead. He's got the teleport to come back. But the Dragons are giving up their defense. They had a great one on the bird, but now just giving it up. Ultimate from Coast gets some good damage. LASBRA just snake around the backside, gets the blink, gets the ultimate, but doesn't get enough damage in response. And it's the Highland Ravens who will back away, because look at how low everybody is, and why is Zapman so far back by himself? That's 2 now for the Jade Dragons. It's Screammmmm, Ven, and Hurry all on the run, but I don't think they can escape. Venenu is going to try and stop Dardez, but Venenu's got nothing left in the tank. He'll jump away, but Mike is going to chase him right down. Astrolabe gets the kill. Screammmmm caught out of the jungle. Mike gonna stand there as the brick wall for the Jade Dragons. It's a triple kill for Dardez with a weakened Phoenix. The Dragons have 45 seconds to push.
Hurriwind has to pull out a hat trick here if he wants to keep his base alive. Fire Giant Sobek, it's scary, but does it stop all the Jade Dragons scary? I don't think so.
We're gonna see at least defense on the top side for LASBRA and 4 commit for the Jade Dragons on the push. Hurriwind in the lurk in the waters, gets some damage, but he's not gonna get enough. Dardez stuns him out, and the Jade Dragons will take game number 1.
Talk about a wild back and forth battle. Sieges go one way or the other. Either team approaches a bird. It seems like it just doesn't work, and eventually the game goes long enough. The Jade Dragons find such a clean team fight, 44 minutes in, odds stacked against them, and just make the comeback win.
I mean, how many times this game did we see the Ravens go 5, 6, 7,000 gold down, step up to the Jade Dragons and win a fight handedly? But on then that inverse is how many times we see them step up to a Phoenix, and it just goes so horribly for them.
I couldn't tell you exactly what it is between these 2 teams, but the ability to knock down a bird and survive seems to be a foreign concept in this matchup.
It's just walk up, kill a Phoenix. All right, cool. Everybody back away. Nope, all of a sudden, Zapman is the one person who's sitting so far back, had his relics, had ultimate, gets caught on the middle of all of it.
How is he there alone?
And I don't know why Zapman is so far up by himself on the Danza.
He must have gone in with the initiation. My eyes got lost in the color explosion that was that team fight, but must have followed up on Haddix's ultimate, and Haddix says, well, I'm a tank and I'm gonna walk away because we are getting stomped in this engagement. And Zapman once you ult in, you're stuck in.
I mean, maybe it was once he saw LASBRA blink in between like 4 people, he said, I guess I'm going to go away from LASBRA. I don't want to die to Scorching Blink, but maybe not quite the call that he was able to make there. It's the Jade Dragons who come out on top in game number 1. We'll throw it to a quick break, and we'll come back with game number 2.
Can it be that I can see excessively? I need to breathe. Lay awake, I can break the cycle's back.
Locking him down finally. Someone's able to kill him, but Trelly, it's 1 kill in a field of death for Hex Mambo. 4 of them are gone. Haddix with a double. Now Julio taking off the board. A full-on deicide for the Ravens.
I think this year, coming back from Leviathans, he wanted to do some stuff a little bit differently than what he was able to do on the Leviathans last year. Just like play what he wanted to play. And then I think with having Scream on the team, funny enough, I think it kind of opened up what he can play. He's been playing a lot of different things than he's used to playing. It just kind of made him really comfortable on different things and kind of gave him, I think, a good confidence boost on some of the stuff that he hasn't played before. It kind of allowed him to be that mechanical player that he always has been and really just like show that he's got that dog in him, I guess.
I really enjoyed coaching him. I think that he's a really, really intelligent player. I think he's got a lot of good opinions about the game. I think that he can be a bit hard-headed at times, but not in a way where you can't get through to him. So I think that he's got a good mix of I feel really strongly about these things, and I think that he has good and correct opinions of the game as well. But I think that the good thing about him is he can also, in certain situations, concede a bit to at least make it manageable for the team. And individually, that guy as well, he's really talented.
I don't think of him as like a carry player with like the mage meta that's been going around a little bit this year. To me, Haddix is just a super consistent player. Honestly, it's not really, I don't know if it's a fair critique of him or his teams in the past, but you have to look at him and see that he hasn't really had a lot of tournament success.
As far as like laning, and again, it's hard to say nowadays because it's not nearly as skill expressive, but like, I think he's probably one of the better like actual solo laners, like the person in the early game. So definitely has that advantage in a lot of sets, like they can play through his lane.
I don't think he goes for like out of the box picks as much, which is a weakness, but I think just him being a very consistent and stable solo laner is like an absolute like win con and such a gift for the Ravens.
He won't be the guy to lose you the game, but he won't be doing what Haddix does to win you a game. I think he kind of he goes from like an S tier to maybe like an A tier if the meta shifts are not in his favor. He's also just got a generally aggressive playstyle, but he also is very predictable in terms of what he's going to play. You know, if Cthulhu's meta, you know he's snap blocking that Cthulhu in straight away. Not that it's a bad thing, but kind of makes it easier to like know what to play into and how he's going to play. And it's kind of easier to like prep that way against Haddix.
When he's like confident and he knows what's good and like he's playing his meta stuff, I mean, he's like Benji level. I mean, it's a different beast when he's like on his game and he's like, yeah, it's crazy for sure.
So basically he said I'm really, really annoying to deal with, but I'm good, which I'll take it. That's pretty good. This is like, I feel like this is a whole glazing video so far. Oh. I've heard this so many times from Twig, it's insane. He tells me I'm a meta player, or he's like, he's yapping about some random pick stuff all the time about this. This is usual Twig, all right? Don't listen to it.
But I think just him being a very consistent and stable solo laner is like
I take it back. He knows what he's talking about. Never mind. He knows what he's talking about.
win con and such a gift for the Ravens.
You hear that? I'm a gift. I'm a gift for the Ravens. Never mind, Twig knows what he's talking about. Oh.
With generational improvements, aesthetic updates, and our consistently high build quality, this system is bound to be the envy of both family and friends alike. For yours, check out StarForgeSystems.com, and I'll see you in the Forge.
Game 1 of Dragons and Ravens officially in the books. Started like an hour ago. Goodness, what a lengthy game number 1. All the love to the boys joining me back on the desk, and all the love to StarForge Systems, who supplied all of our player PCs for this event, hand-built in Texas. And hey, it's good enough for the SMITE World Championship, good enough for you at home. PCs at varying price points. Make sure to check them out. Thanks again to StarForge Systems for bringing our players the best experience they can get on the main stage. Also, for everyone in venue, there's a meet and greet with the Oni Warriors going on right now. If you're interested in meeting those guys, you go to where you checked in up front at the front of the venue, take a right. There's a concession stand down that hallway. You're going to walk down that hallway, and the Oni Warriors hanging out before their matchup later on today. So want to plug the meet and greets. They're going on all weekend long. Oni Warriors right now. Front of the venue, take a right. If you get it wrong, Frog's fault. We'll blame him for that one.
I wrote that down. I want to meet him.
That was for you. And you know what? You'll get a chance to after we take a look at the Steel Series moments of glory from Game 1. There were a lot in this one, Hazer. A 40-some-odd minute game. Both teams had their opportunities to win. Yet we're looking back in the first couple of minutes, and what a back-and-forth affair we had.
Absolutely. I mean, this game started off great for the Jade Dragons. They controlled that early game, controlled that mid game, and they got to the point where they had FG and they wanted to siege down the solo side of the map. And I feel like that's kind of where this game went for both teams, sieging. Big issues for both squads in this one. But we see the Jade Dragons were really controlling this. This is all Dragons highlights up to now. They seem to just have the better end of the early game against the Ravens, but the Ravens battled back into it big time around FG, Bobby.
Yeah, and sieging is the entire highlight for both teams, or I guess I should say poor sieging for both teams.
Yeah.
This want to just 5-man group for both teams, just run it down. I mean, the one side, Nika ults into the Phoenix. Team doesn't come with them, Nika dies. On the opposite side, Ravens go for the Phoenix. 5-man on EFG, they go in, or they start backing up. Zap goes in and he dies. So it's just both of these teams don't seem to be on the same page with their sieging. And the crazy thing is you don't have to 5-man siege, play to split a little bit. That's how EFG is won. That's like the best way to play around it.
And I think this type of game, I mean, you really get the chaos in which Morrigan can thrive. Dardez looked like a man on a mission in this game. You saw him, I think, on multiple attempts of those siege opportunities. He gets that invis stun onto Zapman, and then he gets the triple kill to end the game and be able to push down on the Titan. I'm not sure that this is a pick that they can really allow him to have in game number 2. I mean, but even outside of that, even outside of picks and bans, these sieging attempts, the back and forth, I think both teams have things they want to clean up from game number 1.
Absolutely, and one thing that's catching my eye straight away there, VaporishCoast, 50,000 damage. Zapman, 19,000 damage. Where is that Zap passive? This is the 3rd time up against Coast, new boy on the block. And Coast, I mean, I think we could say that he got the better end of that one.
Yeah.
Inbound, we talked a little bit during the game. Now it's a mountain of damage from VaporishCoast. Were there build concerns from you in game 2? Some things you saw that surprised you potentially, or was it smooth sailing on that front?
I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the Magi's into Bellona. It seemed like they had this Magi's on cooldown for 90% of the game. That's just not a god you can build Magi's into. She forces it too easily. It's something that Scourge is on like a 15-second cooldown. You can easily pull it and it'll be back up by the time the engage is actually starting. That is an issue. Don't build it into Morrigan or into Bellona. Build something else. And then the opposite side, I think the potential frontline damage that the Ravens had, the Baba build path, 2 defense items, and then Zapman's build path with no kins, no Deathbringer, it really made this Osiris hard to deal with. Only 1 death onto the Osiris, and it was on that int.
That's exactly it. We were talking about how do they kill this Osiris. The only time they managed to kill him was when he jumped in between Phoenixes and was stuck there like a lemon trying to open the door with no Phoenixes down. Couldn't get out of there, eventually falls. But I do think that was a real issue. Something that we've seen from other teams is perhaps the Baba Yaga skip out on that cloak and go more damage.
See what adaptations are afoot as the Jade Dragons and the Highland Ravens go into picks and bans for game number 2. A reminder, this is a best of 3 Jade Dragons win, they're going to the semis, and the Ravens are going home. Ravens hoping to push us into a game number 3. Frog, the typical question would be, you got 6 bans right off the rip now. Are you expecting changes based on the picks that we saw succeed in the first game?
I think you are expecting changes. I mentioned already, I would like to see that Morrigan banned. I mean, we were criticizing it a little bit on the desk early on, saying that there are no golden transformations, and still Dardez makes it look like a standout pick, one of the signatures from the Jade Dragons mid laner. That being said, I don't think it's a bad idea to stick to your guns, right? I mean, they had a lot of pressure on both sides. They got plenty of EFGs. If they just clean up that sieging a little bit, they could go back to what's been working.
I just hate this Athena ban. Hazer talked about it in first P's and B's. Your first side, this is such a free first pick, or just something that you can force them to ban. Unfortunately, they're banning it themselves. It just leaves the Dragon this easy opportunity to just throw away ban the Mammon and only have to give up the Baba.
The question is, for me, was game 1 close enough in a game that got lost on just a bad siege, Hazer, that you maybe either team feel comfortable just running back what you just played? Is that maybe why we're seeing some similarities? You're thinking execution diff in game 1.
I could see it a little bit, but the thing you have to keep in mind is that it took the Jade Dragons throwing for the Ravens to get into this game in the first place. The Dragons controlled the early game, controlled the mid game, had the game won, and now we see that switch up. No more of this 19,000 damage Danzaburou coming out. We've got a Heim for Zap.
Now remember, VaporishCoast in the pregame interview said, Zap, hope you're going to get nice and comfy beneath your tier 1 tower. And then immediately into game 1, Coast finds a kill over in... What is 3 is enough. 3 times is enough. Send him home. Well, Coast is doing his best. And a great start, what I'm getting at in game number 1. Does the Heimdallr speak to you at all here, Frog, in the pivot pick from Zapman?
I think it's definitely a go back to comfort for Zap. We've seen him on this pick before, and Heim, notably, if you're looking to stay safe under the tower, Heim, one of those safer hunters, can be able to teleport all the way back down the lane. And so he's going to have a little bit better of a time in that 1v1, and I think allow Zap to have a little bit more presence in that lane.
I think the biggest part about this Heimdallr is to try to stop the Morrigan from getting locked in. It is one of the hardest counters for the Morrigan to play into. And actually with that, the Jade Dragons had to flip over from that Morrigan to this Aphrodite, but I mean, Aphrodite is something they're just as comfortable with.
Absolutely, I love this Afro pick, especially as it's a god who you can pair with somebody who's feeling hot and just stick to them and let them dive, let them play aggressive, give them an extra beads, an extra Aegis. And right now, I feel like Mike's going to go back to what we've seen him do before in this Afro and just stick to Coast. He's going to allow Coast to play extra aggressive to get more done. He just dropped 50k in the last game with an Atlas supporting him. Now he's got an Afro paired to him. I'm starting to feel a little bit scared for the Ravens here.
Frog, do you think that Aphrodite now forces the hand of the Ravens to change up their style a bit, or is it not quite that seismic of a pick?
I think it definitely does force a little bit of an adaptation. They've held on to that jungle pick. They've held on to that support pick for later in the draft, right? Don't have that Sobek. And so you're going into the Aphrodite. Not only do you want to think about anti-heal, but you also have to think about how you're going to dive the picks that are attached to you. Now, this is a little bit extra, not just peel, it's literally invulnerability, right? That you cannot kill this god through that Aphrodite ultimate. So you have to be thinking about, especially these roaming picks, the picks that might be in the backline from Scream, how do you want to be diving this Hachiman and whatever mid laner comes out for the Dragons?
And before we even get to Scream's pick, I'm curious what Laz is going to kind of go for now, because if you look at the Jade Dragons comp, where's the engage? Aphrodite, Osiris, not really going to be doing anything on that front. Maybe Laz has to kind of forego his pick for something like that Hun bots just to get the fight started, because if they don't have that, last game they had Mike on the Atlas to just blink in and start fights. They don't have this Hun bots. What are the Dragons going to do to start these fights?
Laz had his chase down in game number 1. And again, we've seen in these Final Four, this is when the picks take a bit of a breather. So you rip through the first 6 picks in this game. Zapman getting some love from the crowd. Oh no, the Coast, oh, we've seen these two. Well, the Jade Dragons fan happy with how game number 1 went. Nice suspenders, by the way. Maybe tomorrow we'll see what happens with my wardrobe. Lancelot locked in for the Jade Dragons. First time we'll get to see Lance here, Hazer.
I do like this. A little bit of AoE here. Good secondary front line, I would say Lance, a strong god at diving, can get in there, can be the engager for this team, and can allow Afro to stay further back, and he can dive in with his Osiris. It's also a pick that I like for LASBRA. He's probably maybe the second best Lance in the league after Captain Twig, been looking really strong on that pick this year. And one other thing that I wanted to take a note of is these bans. I don't know if these teams have been scrimming each other or what. We saw an Ullr ban bottom 2 last time, and this time we've got Zeus and Hebo banned out by the Ravens, taking that away from Dardez. I have to think, Bobby, that these teams maybe have had some practice against each other coming into this event.
Yeah, if I'd have told you that we were going to be expecting Hebo Zeus bans, you'd have called me crazy, because this is kind of coming out of nowhere.
A little specific, huh?
It must be, because it's not from Qualies, it's not from before. It's been maybe a year since we've actually seen Hebo or Zeus, so they kind of do come out of nowhere. The Ravens with these last 2 picks, something that's sticking out to me is, what is Scream really going to play here? The only thing that really sticks out to me that I think he could actually look really strong on is that nausea, something that he can waste a bunch of time, allow his team to kind of ramp up in these fights. Because last game, the Awilix had some really big pop-up opportunities, but for the most part, Scream didn't have any hyper carry potential, and Nasha not really a one-shot character, but I think Nasha hyper carries through the potential to just waste a bunch of time, get a bunch of relics, and then just execute the person that he does get the beats down on.
It'd be interesting for the Naja. I'm looking for Scream as well. I mean, this would be the time to pick up some spice. If you've been hanging on to a pick, this is the time to pull out something that fits Scream's god pool.
You're a smart man.
Surtr is the lock-in.
Hazer, Surtr, for the jungle of the Highland Ravens. Saw it a little bit early in the year. Mid-season, I was off somewhere else. Still a surprise, though, here at Worlds.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen him in the jungle a little bit, particularly from Scream and a little bit from Sino, and it has looked powerful. A lot of damage out of this god front-loaded. I think one of the items that he likes to build as well, just recently got buffed, Bobby. What's the name of that one? The auto attack one? Arc Druids, that's the one. Really, really powerful on Surtr. Got a buff recently, lets his in-hand damage really do a lot to the backline while he is that little bit tanky himself.
My only worry with the Surtr, I think it's a great pick. We've seen it before, the hybrid potential from him. But do they have the potential to kill through this Aphrodite Hachiman backline? A lot of safety and just a lot of damage also with this Merlin locked in. Scream's going to be put into a position where either he's going to have to build a little bit more damage, I think, or he's going to have to find a lot of anti-heal opportunity, because through that, so much safety on the backside of the Dragons.
I mean, this worries me, just like you were talking about for the damage, because I automatically, you pick Merlin, you think of it as a little bit unsafe, perhaps. You don't have that huge dash, and Hachi, of course, can run away on the horse, but they've both been playing so aggressive. VaporishCoast will ult in, and if either of them are left unchecked, that's really what the Afros are going to do. They're going to dive one person, and maybe you kill the Merlin and Coast goes crazy. Maybe you kill the Hachiman and Merlin gets to go crazy, right? I mean, it's a double-edged sword for how you're looking to dive the Jade Dragons backline.
Yeah, curiosity reigns supreme for me up here on the desk. Inbound, I actually want to come to you as a former competitor. A 45-minute game like that at Worlds does not go your way when you're in a relatively commanding position. You have a chance to siege, maybe grab a Phoenix. What is the mental reset that's required for the Highland Ravens after dropping a game like Game 1?
I mean, I think that's the value of the veteranship on this team. Zapman's brought in for his potential to win these Worlds, and if there's anyone that's going to be able to give you that mental reset that, oh, I was 0-10, it doesn't matter, let's go to the next one, Zapman's going to be able to do that. It's the same thing with Scream. Scream is really good at that also. He's able to just kind of mentally reset, go into that next game, and that is kind of a strength of this Ravens, I think. They have that veteran leadership, and they have that potential to just lose Game 1, not in a way you want to, and then go into that Game 2 and just reset.
Wonder if, the Surtr, is that a mental reset type of pick? But really, Hazer, I'm wondering if this Heimdallr that we talked about earlier in the draft is a mental reset type of pick for Zapman. Was not a great KDA in game number 1. Heimdallr may be a bit safer to get into a power position in game 2.
I feel like this is a go back to comfort for Zap. He did his spicy pick, he did his thing. He was like, Danza, this is my pick I've prepared going in. Doesn't come off for him, and he's like, okay, I'll go back to basics. I'll go back to what I know works. But one problem I have with it is I feel like there's a lot of single target. This Afro counters it out fairly well, and I think that's going to be a real problem for the Ravens going into this one.
All 2-0 quarterfinals last year. Do we get our first 3-game set? We'll go down to our casters to find out.
That's right, it's the Jade Dragons trying to make their way to the semifinals with a 1-game advantage now against the Ravens.
But always happens with Zapman if you go back to old reliable, open up the case, pull out, say, what can the Heimdallr do to see if he can bring it back some victory?
And I think the Heimdallr is just a smart decision again to keep Dardez off of the Morrigan. That pick absolutely blows the doors open in game number 1. So not only a favorite for Zapman, but a smart denial away from the Jade Dragons. That said, that's not the most interesting thing that we see on the Highland Ravens. It's got to be that Surtr pick. The Fire
100%.
Giant Unleashed, now playable in Smite. That is a guy that I'm very, very much so a massive fan of, especially through levels 6 through 12. Feels like he really does get a lot of that damage stacking up. You can play him hyper aggressive. His burst is relatively good. Easily confirmable, single target, but easily confirmable CC. Makes it just so easy for you to roll through just about any given lane. But that comes with a flip side, a double-edged sword, as we heard on the desk. Your late game, not so great. If you're not stacking up your passive, if you're not playing well with a lead, if you have to go towards slightly defensive items, all of a sudden what was 100 to 0 becomes like 100 to 80.
That's why we've kind of been seeing almost that flip where you build super damage, or you know, a lot of damage right out the gate, and then you start kind of becoming that, I guess, third tank in this case, you know, alongside Haddix and Hurriwind. So I wonder where Scream will go with this style of build. We don't even see the Soul Enders get to the minions first, where they started scrapping over on their side. Last game, it was wave number 1 that we had saw a kill for VaporishCoast up against Zapman. Might not see that same exact level, but Hurriwind instead is the one starting to fall a bit low in duo.
And duo lane fights for the Highland Ravens, just not exactly favorable at any point here, unless they actually kill someone. Otherwise, it's, all right, I'll back up, I'll clear the wave, and I'll resustain all the while. Coast doesn't care. If you continue to hit Flux like this, he'll just play around his HP, he'll play around Mike, and so long as Mike has mana, Coast has HP.
And Mike should have plenty of mana to spare, not just from being the support, but also having that meditation available to him. So more health, more mana available for the side of the Jade Dragons in the duo. And the duo lane is where it kicked off for the Jade Dragons, and then it got like really quiet for a while, where we saw maybe a little tussle in one lane, maybe not tussle. It wasn't a whole lot of team fighting after that first blooded hit for the Dragons, and it felt like a lot of the lead they could have garnered kind of got a bit squandered.
And then they lost out, the Jade Dragons, that is a neutral farm, by just speed of clear from Scream, that Awilix outpacing the Nemesis on the other side. This time around, speed of clear probably leaning a little bit more so towards LASBRA. That's not to say that Surtr doesn't have the ability to clear out these camps. He certainly does. It's just not the same level of AoE. He has to channel some of those auto attacks a little bit more consistently. And Doug, I'd be really interested to see around level 4 or 5 for Scream, simply what he decides to max out. I believe we're probably looking at about 1 point each ability from here. So we'll get eyes on that before too long. Not exactly a hyper-aggressive first item pick in this Surtr. I'd call him a 2-item power spike style pick, and we'll, with that second item, get a pretty good idea of what Scream's trying to go for.
Yeah, looks like typical Jotuns kind of start out, and then from there, does he go into more damage, or do you go into the defense? I think that's the question we're waiting for with Scream. And at the moment, I think we're trying to get the answer to your question previously, is what do you go? He's going to wait and see. Do I need that extra big burst damage immediately? Can I get a little bit more of that gradual? He blinks in up against LASBRA, gets the beads from the Lancelot. And LASBRA will be fine for now. Nika playing as the gatekeeper to the pack line. Throws out that tether, stuns out both Scream and Haddix.
Is the one. So it's the 1 max there for Scream. That's a lot of additional burst, makes it that much easier to stack up the passive, make sure you get additional damage from that first ability. Of course, finish off any sort of target, be it a god or a camp, as long as they're taking the dot damage from his first ability does more damage later, and that continues to stack up just about infinitely. No one's hitting the cap on that one. Generally, we see about 60 to 70 stacks towards the latest portions of the game. But Scream, for now, okay position to continue just playing passively on map. Until LASBRA starts to throw around his weight a little bit, you don't really expect Scream to be the one getting things started. If anything, you can leverage the global or semi-global from Surtr to follow LASBRA around the map.
Just kind of the story of these two teams in general, or maybe more specifically a couple of players on these teams, goes all the way back. We'll have to hold that thought for the moment. Zapman jumps into the Bifrost just in time, gets away from LASBRA. But you look at some of the storyline with these players, specifically Venenu versus Mike. It feels like ever since Venenu had left Mike's squad, it has been an uphill battle for Venenu, no matter what team he's on, no matter where Mike lands, for Venenu to find success against Mike's teams.
Yeah, it was on the Bolts, now on the Ravens. been stopped by the Jade Dragons the majority of major events we've had so far this year, trying to break that curse at the World Championship. I think Ven is in an interesting position here in that he is just about the majority of the late game team fight potential for the Highland Ravens. Massive damage output, the most consistent damage outputter they've got, as well as essentially another pseudo frontliner can join up with this bruiser style build. We see Prophetic on Baba Yaga just about every time this god is locked in. 3 stacks from her passive means you don't really have to concern yourself with actually making contact with both physical and magical gods, just simplifying your entire game. And then allows you to, with HP shielding on Home Sweet Home, just WM1. And any SMITE pro will tell you, that's exactly what you want to do.
LASBRA, no beats, has to use the ultimate. Good poke from Venenu, dismounts him for a moment, but Laz, quick on the trigger, able to get down to the Grand Joust in time, gets away from both Screammmmm and Venenu. So his bead's still down for 30 more seconds.
So, maybe you can make something happen, but 30 seconds is a narrow window in the world of SMITE, and LASBRA can just play safe in his own jungle for a good long while. Speed buff's still available to be collected there. It means he doesn't really have anything forcing him any further down the map. Even then, and the desk highlights it very well, threat on beads from the Highland Ravens isn't exactly high. You've got a lot of single target CC once more. Hurry, Screammmmm, Haddix. I'm considering in that department. Zapman with the ultimate, but if Heimdallr's using his ultimate aggressively, he's probably already won the fight. Otherwise, we're going to see that, for the most part, just used as a CC immunity or dash out.
Now, one guy we really don't see too often, almost feels like it's a comfort pick for one player specifically in this Merlin. Usually we see Benny kind of default back to it. What is it about the Merlin on this composition that maybe kind of sees good for Dardez? You know, what is it about this guy that really sticks out to him as to going towards it?
It's a relatively safe pick. Flicker just really, really fast dash for him. Maybe it's the AoE damage potential. You can keep back the Highland Ravens. A lot of them are not going to exactly be sneaky with how the fight's going to go down. Scream's going to walk at you. Hurriwind's going to walk at you. Even Ven is going to walk at you. So walk through AoE persistent damage from Merlin, a little bit harder.
Nika uses the Lord of the Afterlife. Screammmmm barely gets up into the Comet in time. He'll crash right back down with Venenu over in mid. Quick collapse by the Jade Dragons, but not quite enough damage yet to take down the Surtr. Still base defense stats, enough to keep him alive, but give it about another 5 minutes and that might just be a death on the jungler.
But given another 5 minutes, and I think we might be looking at a very tanky jungler here, as Scream does elect to go down a more defensive path in that second slot. He's really considering his options. Was a breastplate, now going down that Druidstone tree. That'll help out a little bit, and the desk highlighted it well. Doesn't exactly sacrifice too much in the damage department.
Haddix versus Nika will pretty much just go like this until somebody else shows up to ruin the party. Had their stats a little bit over on the side of the solo lane. It really feels like we're getting kind of sent back 4 or 5 years in the past with this solo lane matchup here. The Osiris Bellona, not something we've seen in quite some time. You know, usually maybe one pops up. Now it's Screammmmm and Hurriwind stepping up. Trying to get some poke towards LASBRA, maybe going for an invade, but there's no camps up and available for either of them to take just yet.
I don't know if you saw that, J-Mac, but Scream's already starting to hit pretty hard. And it's difficult at this portion of the game to deal with the little fire imps that Surtr spawns up. Later on, they're going to die to inconsequential, accidental damage. Dardez is going to throw out a vortex, and all of a sudden, every fire imp around is immediately gone. But we saw it there. LASBRA takes about 100 of his HP, just trying to get it off of him.
Zapman steps into the jungle. Purple buff on its way. We'll just kind of wait really for the big team fight to break out. A little bit of poke action between the two mid laners, but nothing that's going to take either one out just yet. As long as Flicker is up, Dardez usually can get away from this Baba Yaga unless he's in melee range of the gun at that point. But if you're that close to a Baba Yaga, you're probably already messing up as a mid laner.
So Ven's been doing a good job, though, trying to put some sort of pressure out onto Dardez. Maybe force a rotation, keep LASBRA involved towards the center of the map, restrict his ability to get active on these side lanes. Side lane matchup, for the most part, going to go even. We've seen the solo lane boxing match, wet noodle fight, whatever you want to call it. I call it padding stats, as solo laners so often do. And then in the dual lane, it's this awkward interaction of VaporishCoast chomping at the bit, just wants to fight, and he's got the resustain from PBM to do it. And on the other side, it's, well, Hurriwind's got resustain himself with Sickening Strike, and Zapman's playing maybe the safest hunter in SMITE, so when do we get the fight?
They'd love to be able to fight. VaporishCoast thrown back. Zapman used the ult. pulls beads away. Hurriwind in the waters. Get some extra damage up against Coast, but not enough for a kill just yet. Quick stun by Mike May to save Coast from a potential second pluck. And with Scream waiting around the corner, one missed position is all the Highland Ravens need to find their opening.
So you do burn the beads off VaporishCoast, but worth noting, Mike is beads for VaporishCoast, so do it again. On top of the CC immunity available to Coast himself in Ultimate. A very safe lane here for the Jade Dragons. It's not even as if Scream's gonna have the easiest time chasing out Hachi, so any interaction I think we see in the dual lane for the most part is just gonna reflect on the dual lane matchup. Now without beads, if Zapman's left alone with them, Coast might feel a little bit more pressure.
He talked a little bit about how maybe late game gets a bit tougher for the Highland Ravens. For the Jade Dragons, if this game keeps going at this pace, LASBRA keeps taking that much damage, it's not going to be a fun time for the Jade Dragons at all. But as this game starts getting a little bit later, because it really feels like we're already starting to push towards the depths of this matchup, how does it favor the Jade Dragons? Is this a winning style of gameplay, sit back, farm up, or is this one that might want to get a bit more active early?
I think the Jade Dragons have got really good potential at burning objectives, which is something we should likely see in the next 4 to 5 minutes. Otherwise, both sides are going to have significant difficulty in initiating fights. Nika can create a lot of space, but his CC's largely conditional and takes a good long while to channel up. PBM, single target, LASBRA, massive cripple field, doesn't exactly lock anyone down, it just prevents them from running further away. So I could see a late game where it comes down to poke battles between Ven and Dardez, or maybe ADCs trading a little bit of auto attacks back and forth. Likely we see something like an Odysseus bow again, just to spread some damage evenly through the fight. The advantage I see for the Jade Dragons in late game, though, is that sustain. PBM just simplifies so much of the team fight. It's not, well, if I walk up, they'll do 500 damage to me and I can return 500. I'll walk up, we'll trade 500. You can heal me for the 500 while I wait for my cooldown to come back up.
We're nearing the spawn of the first beacon. Still about 45 seconds till that one pans out. Hurriwind going for a bit of an invade. Mike spots him out, but not much the two can do. It's just for that Chester camp over anything, and the shield buff to the way of the Highland Ravens. LASBRA shows up to the left side just to make sure Highland Ravens don't try anything sneaky. And 11 minutes into the game, we're dead even, or double digits in gold, single digit in experience separating the two teams.
There's just not much that can really happen this early on. Both teams struggling to find easy targets. Hurry seems to think he found his. VaporishCoast set flying.
He just only got his beads up now, and on landing, Zapman's got a lot of damage, and with Hurriwind nearby, it's the Highland Ravens on the board first. Zapman returning the favor.
And talk about how narrow the margins are. What is that, half a second until his beads are back and available? The Highland Ravens just have those timers down pat. VaporishCoast pays for it and now gives them the advantage around this Stygian beacon.
4 Ravens grouped up, only 3 Dragons in response. No, make that all 5. Haddix is even over here. This could mean that the Highland Ravens could be opting to go just towards the Gold Fury. Haddix and Venenu will stand nearby while the other 3 go towards Gold Fury. Can LASBRA even steal this one away? Jumps up onto the horse, gallops him, and he gets stunned off the horse. Now he's been dismounted, uses his beads, and might just have to dash away. The Highland Ravens get the Gold Fury for themselves. But Haddix half HP and Venenu on the run. Nika and Mike are just gonna chase him, but he gets stunned out of the dash. Venenu's got nowhere to go. It's Dardez with 1, and Haddix on a quarter HP, able to get some bailout from Hurriwind. But LASBRA, he is on the hunt, sees the blink, backs away. Can Zapman even get out? Does he have a Bifrost to escape, or can he just get the back in time? I don't think the Jade Dragons realize how far back he was.
No eyes on Zapman, so a good escape. 1 for Gold Fury trade, but waited further in favor of the Jade Dragons with this tier 1 tower in mid. Opening with the map pretty significantly, makes it easier for the next round of Gold Fury for the Jade Dragons, or even Pyromancer when it spawns up. Credit to the Highland Ravens, though. Great screen from Scream. Just says, all right, well, if the only threat of steal is LASBRA setting out a Spectral Horse, what if I stun him off? From there, LASBRA just fully commits to the disengage, and there was no steal potential left for the Jade Dragons. Good chase down, though, as Hurry hit a minion.
And now with no tower to run to, but Dardez out of cooldowns can't get the last bit of damage to take down Hurriwind. An unfortunate minion blocking the path of the support for the Highland Ravens. But he's fine for the time. And even if you look up at the gold after that trade out, was, remember, Gold Fury and a beacon to the Ravens, but that kill, that tier 1 tower, at least gold-wise, puts us net even for the Jade Dragons and experience favoring them.
Scream pretty far forward here. Does a ton of damage to Mike and has none returned. Resustain available as Hurry back to the scene of the crime. Will rejoin the team fight. I don't really think the Highland Ravens want to force too much here. Jade Dragons can just kite around the engagement. Instead, I think it's really more so about just preventing that Pyromancer, and the Ravens do a good job of it. Haven't exactly seen proactive play from Scream insofar as ganks, though. I want to see how that ultimate's going to play when he's not just using it to escape, because this threat from Dardez is always there. Just pull Pyro, drop it to 60, 70% with one ability rotation, and someone for the Ravens is going to have to show up every single time.
I mean, the Dragons realized they didn't have enough damage for Pyro, or they caught Venenu on that ward just below the pit. Backed away for the time being, so no Pyro to be had for the Jade Dragons. Gold Fury's still going to be down for about another minute and a half before we get maybe another chance at a fight on that side of the map. I mean, at a moment, we had seen Haddix rotate over to the left side of the map. That's kind of the telltale, said, hey, I'm over here in mid, I think we can do gold, and it worked out well for the Ravens, but Nika just kind of sat back for a little while, waited, and then once the fight starts up, we see Nika really rotate in.
He farms up all the while until that rotation comes through, puts him maybe about a one tier of an item ahead, but that tier happens to be a tier 3, so finds a good deal more value from his item. LASBRA nearly spots out Zapman on that teleport. Could have been an opportunity to get aggressive. I'm just not so certain the Jade Dragons without Nika can create the space to look at that Pyromancer. And we've seen both Mike and Dardez hovering Pyromancer for what feels like 2 or 3 minutes now. Just, is anyone nearby? If yes, reset. If no, we'll commit a little bit more to it. But the Ravens have had the answer each time. Get Nika out of lane, play with his lead, and all of a sudden Ven can't just walk up and heat check you as easily.
You do have that staff from Mirror to now finish up for Dardez as well, so extra bit of damage versus defense for Venenu, but now it's the Ravens stepping up to Pyro for a round. Mike, a bit out of position, but still has access to the ultimate, so will remain fine. All of the Highland Ravens want this Pyromancer. They'll commit for the objective. What about the fight after? Haddix gets stunned out. Nika gonna get stunned as well by Scream, but Nika's not gonna give up this chase. He's 2 levels up on Scream. He'll just hold W key, left click, chase down the jungler, try and get that ultimate if he can, and he gets it just in time. Scream able to escape, but those are narrow margins.
Send all the Highland Ravens packing, and with VaporishCoast on this side of the map, Fire Giant, it's a viable option.
Fire Giant now down to 40% removed from it. The Highland Ravens walk forward. Hurriwind's low, but Nika dives on top of 2 with Zapman and Ven. They can't heal back up, and it's only 1. Haddix is by himself. He's got an Eagles rally out of the team fight, and Nika pulled back in right to the hands of Venenu. Scream full HP. He blinks in, tries to get LASBRA, but won't find the CC, won't find the damage just yet. The Highland Ravens keep the Dragons away from fire.
Love the attempt there from the Jade Dragons, but a better answer from the Highland Ravens. Returns it back to an advantage state to the order side. I know it's a lot of scrapping, not a lot of killing, but at the end of the day, it's Pyromancer for none. The Highland Ravens keep that Runic Bomb in pocket. Scream holding on to it. It's 1,000 true damage on structure or objective. I mean, they've got biggest number on map for confirmation. There's nothing the Jade Dragons can throw at a Gold Fury to beat 1,000.
Good lord, LASBRA takes so much damage from Scream. That's the damage we were starting to talk about just a bit earlier. Fully maxed out that first ability, got that Arc Druids a few stacks up, left that one unleashed. And you can see what it can do to the squishier target in this Lancelot. Not gonna get too much more damage probably in the build for Scream now that this Runeforge is done. Likely be looking towards more defense, but there's a nice little heat check for Scream versus Laz.
I wonder if Screamer likes to go towards something like a Spirit Robe. Would get some CDR, would stop a lot of the CC, the inconsequential CC of the Jade Dragons. Jade Dragons right back at it though, aren't they, J-Mac? Fire Giant pulled once more.
Fire Giant started up. Highland Ravens starting to slowly collapse back in. Haddix is the first one in the pit while Venenu just pops damage over towards PBM and Coast, but Venenu has to use the blast off to get away. Mike is at half HP and Haddix is gonna commit to the fight himself. Hurriwind dives in along with them. There's no ultimate left for Mike, but they're not gonna commit to the kill to him. Instead, LASBRA and Nika are being chased out as Hurriwind's low, but Haddix to the near backside. Can't get anything. Scream though, able to take down Mike. It's 1 for 1, but Scream is going for more. He wants Dardez, he wants Coast. He'll get the relics from both of them, but can Scream even get to the back for the kill? Yes, he can. Double kill and 1 for Haddix. Haddix, that's 3 on the side of the Ravens, but it's LASBRA and Nika trying to chase down Venenu. Can they get enough damage to kill this Baba Yaga? Zapman's still down for a while, but Venenu doesn't need the help. The Dragons will not continue their pursuit.
It's the battle of the dive as the Jade Dragons front line, LASBRA and Nika, leave the back to their own devices. Dardez, PBM, VaporishCoast on the retreat the entire time as the Highland Ravens take a split engagement in the jungle, but win out cleanly. It's the defensive capacity of this Ravens draft that gives them that opportunity. Good luck chasing out Zapman. He's just got too much in the tank. Teleport away, CC immunity, both relics were available, I believe, and now all of a sudden, the Jade Dragons overcommit, stick around too long, and LASBRA's done it himself this time.
Scream's just gonna run him down. Hurriwind right behind, but they can't close the gap just yet. Scream's blink not back up yet. Used it just to start that fight out, but will now force LASBRA away. Beads down for 150 plus on LASBRA. Scream got a heat check earlier and says, I'm more than capable of 1v1ing this guy.
Yeah, LASBRA does not want to line up against Scream. Just way too tanky, not enough damage. I mean, you could go for the poke battle, and then Serrated Edge for LASBRA can help out a bit on resustain if you're allowed to go hit a jungle camp, but I don't think Scream's going to let you walk away from him for free. Jade Dragons, they're keeping up this pressure, though. The Highland Ravens have had answers each time. Answer this time from Zap is reset Gold Fury low. Hurry's going to have to rotate through and take it up for him. But on the other side, it's Pyromancer for the Jade Dragons.
No crit this time from Zapman, so can't solo the Fury on his own this early in the game. We'll get some backup.
Got real close.
So will be Fury for the Ravens, but as you mentioned, they trade that out for a Pyromancer, and if we're back to the same point that we've been all game, barely 1,000 gold separated the teams, XP nearly dead even. At 20 minutes of the game, this is as close of a game as we can get.
I mean, it's just a repeat of game one, right? Feels like it's going to come down to sieges and maybe mistakes there. It's neither side really finding the advantage in neutral territory engagements. You'd think jungle fights would go a little bit better for the Jade Dragons. That's one of Merlin's just bread and butter engagements. It's just, okay, well, the jungle corridor is tight and all my abilities fully encompass them. The Highland Ravens have navigated it very well. Ven in particular has really impressed me with his positioning in some of these fights. Nika has been very much so just trying to remove Ven from the team fight, and Ven's always there to do just enough damage to the backline of the Jade Dragons that he's got his job done.
So now we wait, maybe just for the next objective to spawn back up before we see these teams group up once more. Zapman taking a 1v1 under the tier 1 tower and not only winning the 1v1, but taking the tower all the while up against LASBRA. Not going for crit for either of these hunters last time. Zapman was pumping out some big damage numbers on objectives, but once it came down to the team fight, we really didn't get to see a whole lot out of Zapman, especially on some of these sieges.
Yeah, we'll see a little bit more now. Kinsi's finished up. If Zapman's only able to hit the front line of the Jade Dragons, he'll at least hit them hard now. XC, Dom, and Kins. Good luck. No amount of defense is going to make you immune to the damage from Zapman here, so even Nika going to have to show some respect going forward. Keep my eyes on it, though. No crit means that he's got a little bit less of a good time fighting the actual squishy, so LASBRA can actually close gap. If VaporishCoast can find him, hasn't gone for crit himself, but would be a little bit more of an even engagement.
Dragons starting to group towards Fire Giant side. Not likely to pull it immediately, but crazier things have been done by teams on the world stage. For Jade Dragons, all they need to do, win this game, they move on to the semifinals. Highland Ravens have got to battle back not just this game, but also for game number 3. As close as it is, I mean, these are the moments where we really start to see these games get drawn out a little bit more. The kill numbers start to drop a little bit in these really high stakes situations for teams.
And neither side just has a clear answer to the Fire Giant question, which is who can pull it and how do we secure it? Runic Bomb matched on both sides means 1,000 true damage is the best case confirm on the objective. Burn potential favors the Jade Dragons, but it seems to me the front line of the Highland Ravens has been getting the better end of a lot of these team fights, so even if Dardez does damage to Fire, can't exactly stick to it.
Are you seeing what Scream is doing to maximize stacks? Kills one minion with his first ability, throws his little Surtr minion at him, and then he picks it up to throw it away to get another stack. That's how much this guy has been min-maxing how many stacks he's able to get on that first ability.
And that's the only way to keep Surtr involved in late game team fights. You need that passive stacked up, otherwise your first ability is doing nothing. It just does not have enough damage on the base stats itself. So love what we've seen so far from Screammmmm. He's been doing it around the mid camps as well. He was playing it very well in the back camps. He's willing to sacrifice time in the jungle just to confirm a little bit more damage from that ability.
Because outside of Venenu and Zapman, when he's able to get to the backline, there's not too much on the side of the Highland Ravens. And even with Venenu, it's a lot of residual unless you can get a double potion, maybe that Witchfire magic thrown in at the same time. The Highland Ravens get some ward coverage down around the Fire Giant pit. Maybe some much needed vision against the Jade Dragons. We've seen that they're a team where if you give them an inch, they'll pull that Fire Giant and really kind of just beg anybody to show up and say, you know, we're just going to take the objective if you're not here. Highland Ravens at Pyromancer, pull down to half. Pluck on Nika is good, but Zapman stunned in the back line. Pyromancer reset. Eagles rally in by Haddix, and it's Screammmmm on top of LASBRA. The fight has been split into 4v1 each way. Nika half HP. House out of Venenu, just throwing damage, throwing out as much as they can. But Dardez and Nika have stacked up, and Nika's been thrown back, but Hurry's too far forward. Even with all the help, it's still not enough damage. The Highland Ravens, they're the ones who got to back away now.
Slept on facet of Aphrodite's game is how much defense she shares. Whoever's mic is kissed to. Just going to be a little bit tankier. So the Highland Ravens have to be really choosy with their targets. Late game team fight goes slightly south. Only support dropped. 20 seconds on respawn. Jade Dragons, they're pulling the fire for what, the 4th time?
Zapman's got a 1v1 Nika, and this isn't a fight he wants to take. He gets some help from Venenu, stun onto Nika, and Screammm's getting out a lot. Haddix in the middle of 3 gets a big bludgeon, but it's not going to be enough to take down Nika. It's now the Jade Dragons on the run. They had 5 going in this fight, and they might just lose a couple of them. Coast can't get away. He needs help from Mike, but there's no ultimate.
Wow.
And so Venenu's able to close that one out, takes him down. The Highland Ravens have turned around for one of their own.
Aggressive leap from Ven. Desinks the death of Coast, 45 seconds. Great space created. Seemed to me Coast really wanted to connect with Screammmmm, but it would have taken 3-4 auto attacks from there. Doesn't have crit, so can't just get lucky, and so Screammmmm baits him out of position, and Ven says, well, I know your relics aren't up, buddy. Knocks him down. That jump from Baba Yaga probably doing upwards of 30% of VaporishCoast HP. So now it's 20 seconds without ADC, and the Highland Ravens in the driver's seat looking towards the fire. But Zapman hasn't gone crit, so objective burns relatively low. Baba Yaga, this is not her MO. We, for the most part, just see Baba Yagas go for poke in situations like this. Fire, HP's not moving.
No crit available for Zapman. He's just chipping away at it slowly. Nika back at full HP, trying to get inside of the pit. LASBRA looping around because Venenu's starting to fall low. That's a juicy target for LASBRA. He goes to the backward branch outs, but Venenu's got a house of his own. The Highland Ravens get the Fire Giant, and LASBRA's got nothing left in the tank. He used everything to get to the fight and nothing to save forward, and with it, the Highland Ravens can charge forward. It's Haddix finding a big Eagles rally to zone the Dragons away. The Ravens get a bit of wind under their sails.
Man, this Lancelot's not doing a lot of damage. Connects with Ven on the ultimate there. And you'd think, okay, clean win. Instead, it's the Highland Ravens grab fire, grab the fight afterwards as well. LASBRA, no mana to take that engagement whatsoever. As this next item is picked up for LASBRA, a little bit more percent pen. You could deal with some of the defense stacked up by Ven, by Prophetic Cloak, but all of a sudden it's the Highland Ravens with the first significant advantage in this game. Gold as well as fire on 5, and all neutral objectives to be grabbed. Plenty of towers to collect. Only silver lining for the Jade Dragons, and it's a significant one. Merlin is maybe the best mage on base defense.
We saw it so many times through the regular season. Having a tough time sieging or defending sieges, pick Merlin, pick Marty, you're set. Sit back and you can kind of just coast on anything that gets thrown at you. At least one of those pieces picked up by Jade Dragons with Dardez on that god. But now, it's kind of the real big question for the Highland Ravens is how much have they been able to clean up their siege from game 1 now here, because that was their difficulty. When they had the advantage, siege is no problem. But when we got to those 5v5s, the Ravens just could not break the base.
Add another tank to your composition, it's a little bit easier to start sieging up. For me, is ADC alive? If yes, you're allowed to siege. Who's tanking the tower? Usually it's the soul laner, usually it's the support. Now you can add Screammmmm to the mix, start mixing it up between the 3 of them, and all of a sudden, create some space, have Ven poke in some damage. Things look a little bit easier for the Highland Ravens here. It's just that persistent damage on field from Dardez that is going to be a major thorn in the Highland Ravens side. Good luck walking into a Phoenix range when there's an Arcane Blast there, when there's an Ice Storm on your head. You got to deal with Dardez, There are answers to them, though. Maybe just send Scream into the back line with the ultimate?
We do have a bit of pause in the action. Actually, a bit of a delayed, Titan kind of marching out. Usually it's around that 25, 24-minute mark that we see that one out, but because of how much fighting has been around this Fire Giant, for how many team fights have broken out there, it has really just kind of been delaying until we see them now. Highland Ravens, having that Fire Giant on all 5, can start their march up the right side.
And it seems to me right side is exactly where the defense is going to lie for the Jade Dragons. Looking at it as it is, the Jade Dragons are actually playing pretty far outside of their base, so maybe you try and catch the Highland Ravens on the way in. I think they'd be much better suited just playing inside of their Phoenix. The unofficial 6-man additional DPS, going to be significant. That's the Savage right there. He's a bit of a savage. That's why he's allowed to walk in front of the caster shot. I think the Highland Ravens, much better position this time around. That said, though, I keep talking, it's like this circular conversation I'm having with myself. Better Siege, better defense from the Jade Dragons. Siege where both teams struggled previously. History's any indicator, whichever team's sieging tends to lose the team fight.
It's kind of just this ultimate flow chart that keeps going out and just keeps dividing into smaller and smaller branches at this point. We'll have to see which path we eventually get led down to now. For the Highland Ravens, they continue their siege forward. Remember, they've got the Titan on their side. It's going to be fully alive and healthy. We can jump back into the game. The Highland Ravens start their siege, but not before they at least get a bit of extra help. A Pyromancer, Runic Bomb makes sieges a little bit simpler for themselves, and putting it to the belt of Scream means that he has a small bit of split push potential.
And if it's going to be a 4-1 split, we have seen many interactions between Scream and LASBRA, and it begins and ends with Scream hitting as 1 and LASBRA saying, well, that hurt a whole lot. I don't want to fight you anymore. So I think best case scenario for LASBRA is ignore Scream, maybe run past him, try and deal with those minion waves, because it's not an enhanced Fire Giant. You can't just ignore the backdoor protections just yet.
No, not everybody's full slotted either, so it takes a little bit longer to chip away at these towers anyways for both of these hunters. Scream will go for the 1v1 against Laz under tower, and we can already see how that one's going. Scream favored for that. Highland Ravens do manage to get the tier 2 tower on right. Still 2 left standing with Scream already starting up the split push. Makes it that much easier for his team to rotate over and just start chipping away at the next structure.
So that's going to be the case. I wonder if you just play the shuffle game, send Scream left, keep that split push up. Haddix takes a lot of damage there. Has teleport available, so if you want to go ahead, head back to base, resustain, and get involved again. An option available. No neutral objectives on the left side of the map means the Highland Ravens essentially just collecting classic farm, oracles, collect your camps, head back to base, you can power spike up, but it's a little bit of time lost in their Fire Giant power play.
And for all the damage that's thrown to Haddix, that's through double defense on both fronts, physical and magical, maybe now. At least this Mantle of Discord gives him a little bit of that extra boost to try and help out. But with Fire Giant fading away in just under 30 seconds, Jade Dragons didn't lose anything that would deter them from stepping up. And now that's an enhanced Fire Giant that can be fought on essentially even fronts. I say that. It's an 11,000 gold lead for the Highland Ravens comparatively. Still a tough one for the Dragons to fight into.
A pretty significant advantage here over the Highland Ravens in itemization. Zapman in particular finishes up Odysseus bow and picks up a power pot, whereas VaporishCoast just has the tier 1 bow. So AoE damage now over to the Highland Ravens, a little bit of additional power and just way more auto attacks. Oboe, the most attack speed that any item gives you in Smite. It's not exactly an expensive item though. If the Jade Dragons can delay just a moment or two for Coast to farm up and finish up that Odie, that'd be such a big boon to them.
Even with how little fighting that we've been seeing, you're gonna see just how much damage Dardez has been putting out this game. I believe 30,000, 33K to him. The next below him, 10,000 down on Venenu. Just the amount of times the Ravens have walked up into Dardez's damage, starting to stack up, and with approaching 6th slot and having that alternate timeline, Dardez is one that you've got to keep your eyes on for the Highland Ravens, not one that you can just so freely walk into anymore.
You know what's really concerning me, J-Mac? Let's call a spade a spade. Why are the Jade Dragons struggling as much as they are? 6,900 damage from their jungler, out-damaged by Aphrodite, and I'm not seeing any damage items for PBM. This Lancelot has just been meeting up with Scream and then running away from Scream. Hasn't exactly gotten into the back line, hasn't found a priority target, and even when he does, the damage has not impressed me.
I think the last time we saw LASBRA do damage to a god, it was Venenu, when he already had his prophetic cloak, and he didn't even kill the shield from that Baba Yaga ultimate, so just not quite there yet for LASBRA. Need to see a step up in the next big team fight, because the Highland Ravens, we've already seen from Scream going this full tanky kind of hybrid style of route for him. It's been working out really well for the Ravens. In fact, he's so confident, he's walking up and he's 2v1ing and still winning those 2v1s.
And what did LASBRA do? He just watched nearby, like, Nika, watch out, that guy hits really hard. I've got a lot of experience with it. Don't get too close. Someone has to get involved here from the Jade Dragons. Nika's doing his best to just stand in front of the damage and allow the space for Dardez to put up the 34,000 that we've seen already, to allow VaporishCoast to shoot those shots from downtown. But I want to see LASBRA either go for a split push play. If you're not involved in the team fight, if you can't get things done, go do something in the PvE, or go for a deep flank and maybe get behind Zapman or get behind Ven. The difficulty of that is, though, Heimdallr's got a lot of vision.
Ooh, Scream no beads, ultimate. Fortunate for him, no crit on the side of the enemy Hunter, so Scream will be able to go back to base, but losing out on that ultimate, that CC immunity on two fronts, not just ultimate, but also beads burned away. Thought maybe he'd catch the slip on Coast, but now it's Coast doing the damage back to him, and the Dragons back to the Fire Giant this time. Still missing out on their one. The jungler of the Ravens not back yet, but the Jade Dragons still not willing to commit to the objective just yet.
And here's the thing about burning beads from Scream. It's something we talked about, what was it, 32 minutes ago now. The ability to initiate fights for the Jade Dragons is very limited. No beads on Scream. Who's punishing him? Is it Nika with his stun? That takes a long time. Maybe a kiss from Mike, but then you got to deal with all the other people around Scream. It's really difficult, I think, to punish him. You've got 2 minutes to figure out how you're going to do it. But even looking at it, who did it there? EI Jutsu from VaporishCoast. Can you trust Coast to dash on Scream every time? I don't think so.
That's not ideal, man. Sending your Hunter to use his only mobility to pull beads, maybe it can work out. Scream gone. VaporishCoast gets one, and now Haddix the next on the chopping block. Nika takes him down. Have the Highland Ravens just step too far forward. It's now going to be 3 versus 5 on defense. Venenu running back. Zapman 5, and it's an Aegis gone, and a beads ultimate as well. No resources left defensively for Venenu.
40 seconds left on nearest respawn. Jade Dragons, 5 strong. Runic Bomb in play for Nika. You can knock down the Phoenix here, but the Highland Ravens have a lot of damage to play with. Ven, in particular, needs to be dealt with.
It's 30 seconds on Scream. Phoenix is down. 5 versus 3. The Jade Dragons are walking into the throne room, but the damage from Venenu is starting to stack up. The Dragons have got to commit everything here, and if they do so, they'll send the Highland Ravens packing, but there's still just enough from the defense of the Highland Ravens to keep the Dragons back.
VaporishCoast pushing down the center. We hit the rewind button here. They've done it.
That's it. That's it. The Jade Dragons just have enough to be able to get in there. It seems the minions were just enough to hold things back. They've got the wave to help them out. The Jade Dragons take it.
Congratulations to the Jade Dragons. One misstep from Scream on the center of the map. One kiss from Mike opens up the entitlement. Haddix tries his best to peel, but all he does is put himself in poor position.
And one set of minions to stand by and do the rest of the damage there, because everybody on the Jade Dragon's dead by the time we get back there, and it's just a few minions standing tall to say, we'll finish the job that you started for us.
What a wild end to that game. The Jade Dragons 2-0 continue their streak of putting the end to the Highland Ravens runs here at these events.
Now for the Jade Dragons, they're going to continue on to the semifinals. Their opponent, the Styx Ferrymen, to fight off against. We've seen this one back and forth so many times over the course of the regular season. We've seen this battle between those two teams. We can actually look back at the siege for the Jade Dragons. Apologies for what had happened through, but it is just Coast just literally standing his ground, just throwing auto after auto at the Titan. Everybody goes down, but there's just enough minions from the wave. Coast playing aggressive as per usual. Another EI Jutsu. We said, man, Coast, you're going to want to depend on this guy to use dash to win the game. It did multiple times. Gets beads, gets a kill on Scream, and now ends the game at the Titan.
That's on me. You'll never catch me doubting Coast again. He could be your initiator. He'll be your tower damage. He'll deal with the objectives. He'll do the DPS. He'll put the damage in the PvE, the PvP, whatever you want. He fixed the Jade Dragons, and he pushes them through quarters.
You know why Zapman's saying he reminds me a lot of him? Because that's the exact style of play that Zapman used to pull. This is the next 3-time ready around the corner here, man. VaporishCoast has done really nothing but impress me ever since he's jumped into the pro scene itself, going from whatever team he is on and now to the Jade Dragons. he has looked like one of the best hunters out there.
He really has. Now everybody at this tournament putting VaporishCoast on check. How do we stop him? Are we going to address his god pool? Do you pressure his lane? Because really there needs to be an answer. He's the difference maker. He does it all. It goes all the way back to him just getting the beads off Scream. If that doesn't happen, this game goes another 10 minutes at least.
VaporishCoast not only turns this team around, but turns the game around for themselves. That's it for me and Mifflin. We'll throw it over to Kelly over on the stage for our post-game interview.
Thank you so much. And everyone, I need you guys to welcome Nika here. Nika, thank you so much for joining me here and for taking a moment to answer a few questions. First of all, how does it feel knowing that you're going to be making it to the semifinals?
I think we're all like a little relieved because the best of threes are like the most tense part. You know, like if you make one too many mistakes, you can just get punished so easily. Especially the Ravens. Like we always play the Ravens in these tournaments, and they always push us. So respect to them, and just well played and a good season overall. And yeah, just happy to make it through.
I think all of us could feel the stress during both of those games because there was moments. The first game lasted 45 minutes. It was very back and forth, and same thing in game number 2. What was really the turning point in that game where you guys knew you had it?
I think a lot of it is just remaining calm. Like we felt like we had the drafts on lock, especially game 2. We just had to slow it down and be a bit more disciplined. Like game 1, we kind of tossed the game a little bit and gave them a big chance to come back. And game 2, we just wanted to slow it down and be a bit more patient and let them come to us and abuse the mistakes they make instead of the other way around.
Well, that discipline's going to come in handy tomorrow because you are going up against the Ferrymen. How are you and your team feeling about that in the semifinals?
We have a lot of respect for the Ferrymen, but I do think we have a good matchup into them. I think historically we've always done very well into their players, and I'm extremely confident tomorrow, and I can't wait to play.
We can't wait to watch you, Nika. Thank you so much. And guys, let's head back to the desk.
The Jade Dragons are able to hold on here in quarterfinal number 2. And this is a set where the Highland Ravens come out swinging. Remember, early in game 1, Ravens have a lot of momentum back and forth. Siege has gone right, Siege has gone wrong. But it's ultimately the Jade Dragons with a 2-0. Worth mentioning, the opposite start to the season and end to the season now for these two teams. Ravens in phase 1 were 7-3. The Dragons in the other division, 3-7. Now we move on to Worlds and the opposite outcome. Jade Dragons stand tall. And some moments of glory brought to you by SteelSeries here in game number 2 of quarterfinal number 2. Inbound, walk me through some of what you saw here from the Jade Dragons on their road to a win.
I mean, a lot of it was them on the back foot once this game hit that mid-game portion. Really slow early game again, nothing too much popping, but as soon as you hit that mid-game, a lot of this Surtr damage was able to come through the Bellona dive. They couldn't really deal with it. And I think Coast's build doesn't really allow him to really kill tanks in that early portion. But once he got to this late game, the build really came online. The Aphrodite really paired with him. He was able to just shred through both Bellona and the Surtr. If it does go late, you have this Aphrodite, there is so much peel potential, so much damage potential, and you saw once they found Scream in mid lane alone, he gets stunned and he dies before he even get into ult.
Goodness, the tense ending to this game as well. God, we got a chance to look back at that one. Zapman nearly gets it done with a quadra kill in base. Frog, I want to just turn our eyes now towards the happy portion of this one, and that's the Jade Dragons moving forward. Feels like a team that not only in the back half of the year, but now to start off their Worlds run, from Nika's words alone, the weight maybe feels a bit off after the best of 3.
Absolutely. I mean, you heard it from Nika there. I was talking to PBM earlier on in the weekend, and it's always these best of 3s that are a little bit iffy, especially against such a close team like the Ravens. We knew that this was going to be a back and forth set, and sure enough, both games have some elements of that. But to just, and I think that's why you see the call at the very end there. They want to not only necessarily get out of the game, but they want to take their opportunities where they provide themselves. And in a best of 3, sometimes you have to take those risks.
Sort of opposite KDAs between Zapman and VaporishCoast. Hazer, what'd you see from the Jade Dragons and the Ravens to give us the outcome here in game 2?
I think there was just a lot of patience here by the Jade Dragons. That comp, I mean, first blood in this game was about 11:40, 12 minutes sort of thing. This game went slow. When you've got a Merlin in mid and an Afro in support, you want the game to go slow. You want to go late, you want to slow it down and go towards the late game. Merlin ends up with 40k damage. This is a god that we hadn't seen at all in the play-in tournament. I hadn't seen at this event so far. far, and Dardez made it sing. I think they just needed to wait for their comp to come online and then wait to punish the immobility on the other side. Scream on the Surtr eventually caught out, and I think the Ravens had a little bit of helper syndrome there. They all tried to help out the Surtr who got caught, and they get duly punished and end up losing the game.
That's the give and take of these best of threes, right? You lose game one, and then you have a decision to make. Do you try to get creative and find yourself a strange win in game two, or do you return to your roots? Do you play it calm? Do you slow things down? The Jade Dragons stuck with what worked in game one, got them a second win. The first semifinal of the day tomorrow now set. It's the Styx Ferrymen up against the Jade Dragons. We're gonna move into our second half of the day. We still got 2 more quarterfinals. It's Leviathans versus Mambo, followed by Warriors and Camelot Kings. Stage now set, Frog. Ferrymen versus Jade Dragons, a best of 5 to start our day off tomorrow. Initial thoughts?
It's an exciting one. The last time that these two teams matched up, I believe it was a 5-game set back towards that regular season, right? And so, and you heard Nika in the interview, they think they have a pretty good matchup, and confidence is everything, especially after the set that maybe, you know, off to a little bit of a shaky start. The Styx Ferrymen, they do take that 2-0, of course. I think both teams going to be going back tonight, definitely watching each other's sets and trying to plan what they can for the best of 5 tomorrow.
Yeah, set, maybe literally. Paul looked pretty good on it earlier today. Quick thoughts from you, Bobby, on the first semifinal we'll have tomorrow.
I mean, Frog hit it on the head. It was a best of 5 in the Dragons. If you ask them about that set, they think that they should have won it, and they really just threw that set. So now is the chance to prove that they were the better team.
Remember, Ferrymen last year was the Titans, and the Dragons matched up in the semifinals as well. That one went 5. Dragons roster a little bit different, but still a fun storyline to follow. We still got 2 more quarterfinals remaining here today. After the break, the Leviathans and the Mambo take the stage.
Keep